Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 25, Innate Divine Ability. Over the course of the past 61 years in the planar battlefield, Linley had already gained a deep appreciation for the dangers it contained. If he wanted to simply rely on his own power to both acquire sufficient military merits as well as protect his life, it would be incredibly difficult. Now that Linley had joined Ricegem's hunting squad, Linley actually felt relieved. That's nice and straightforward. Let's go. We're preparing to find a place to rest, first. Ricegem said with a laugh. As for that tower-like figure next to Ricegem, he didn't say a single word, just following behind. Ricegem became a purgatory commander long ago, and was able to frighten off Benfield. Linley felt very certain of Ricegem's strength. In addition, according to the descriptions of Ricegem in Baruch's book, Ricegem is a supreme expert who ranks in the top 5 of purgatory commanders. Ricegem's reputation was quite extravagant. Not only was he himself powerful, his mother was the Redbud Sovereign. Boss, in the future, things will be much simpler for us. We'll probably be able to easily acquire military merits. BB began to laugh, and with a flip of his hand, he retrieved another red fruit, biting into it viciously. The nearby Ricegem sniffed the air, then turned to look at BB and immediately laughed. BB, right? This fruit seems pretty appetizing. Give me one. Take it. BB, very magnanimously, pulled out another fruit and tossed it to Ricegem. Ricegem's eyes lit up. Accepting it, he immediately began to eat, then nodded in praise. Crispy and flavorful. Eating it is a pleasure. Thanks, brother. As he spoke, Ricegem stretched his hand out, and a violet fruit appeared. This is something I like to eat. It only exists in the life realm. Have a taste. BB and Ricegem, two people who both had childlike hearts, quickly began to grow close to each other. Linley just smiled calmly while following them, as the tower-like big fellow just followed silently. Hey, Ricegem, I'm not just boasting. My innate divine ability, humph, humph. BB actually started to brag in front of Ricegem. Yours is pretty powerful, but mine isn't weak either. Ricegem said very confidently. But BB, I have to warn you, no matter what, you can't use that innate divine ability of yours against me. I heard from my mother that the innate divine ability of you God-Eater rats is absolutely supernatural. Only someone with a soul-protecting sovereign artifact or who is a high god paragon can resist it, otherwise, there is no way. Don't worry. BB snickered. We're on the same team. Hearing this, Linley had a thought. It seemed as though Ricegem was rather afraid of BB's innate divine ability. Ricegem took a bite of the fruit, then said helplessly, I, Ricegem, am skilled in soul attacks. I don't even fear the soul attacks of high god paragons, but that God-Eater ability of yours, BB, there's nothing I can do against it. That technique of yours is definitely the most powerful soul attack which a high god is capable of. Linley laughed as well. Ricegem's words were very reasonable. BB's technique devoured the divine spark and destroyed the soul. It was indeed the most powerful of soul attacks. According to what my mother said, the innate divine abilities of divine beasts, in terms of fearsomeness, BB, you God-Eater rats are considered one of the top. As for the departed azure dragon, vermilion bird, and the rest of the 4 divine beasts, their innate divine abilities were very terrifying as well. That tree of life from the life realm is also a monster, and the abyssal fruit tree of the netherworld, and, well, most of those extremely monstrous divine beasts all ended up becoming sovereigns. Ricegem said with a praising sigh. Divine beasts were divided into tiers of power as well. God-Eater rats stood at the very peak of divine beasts, but so too did the abyssal fruit tree. These divine beasts and their innate abilities were absolutely unnatural in their power. Hey, what is so powerful about those other divine beasts? Tell me about them. BB said excitedly. Linley was intrigued as well. Although they were walking on the surface of the battlefield, the four were very much at ease. Linley and the tower-like figure kept a constant watch on their surroundings, but clearly, there weren't many people who would be so ignorant as to try to attack their group of four. In terms of pure attack power, the white tiger of the four divine beasts had an innate divine ability that was even more powerful than your God Ader ability. Rice Gem said with a sigh. My mother said that when the four divine beasts joined forces and combined their four innate divine abilities, it was utterly monstrous. They were an extremely powerful force amongst the sovereigns, but unfortunately, they have now all fallen. What a pity. Linley was stunned. The innate divine ability of the white tiger of the four divine beasts was even more powerful than the God Ader ability. Unfortunately, he would never have the chance to see it. After all, not a single one of the successors to the four divine beasts was an actual divine beast, they just carried the bloodlines of the divine beasts. Their innate divine abilities were only unleashed after undergoing ancestral baptisms, and despite that, were incomparable to those of their original ancestors. Even more powerful than we God Ader rats. BB muttered, clearly not willing to accept it. Rice Gem chortled. There are 77 sovereigns, and a number of them are divine beasts. In addition, these divine beasts are almost all unique ones. You'll never see them fight, but even if you do, there is no need for them to use their innate divine abilities. Of course you have no idea as to how terrifyingly powerful their innate divine abilities are. But of course, the combination of the four great innate divine abilities of the four divine beasts is the most powerful divine ability of all. There is no question at all regarding this. While chatting casually, they arrived at a squat dwarf mountain. Hey, Ham, make a cave for us. Rice Gem said. Yes. The big fellow finally spoke. Linley couldn't help but look over. He watched as the big, taciturn giant walked forward to the face of that small mountain, hundreds of meters high. The big fellow placed his giant, fan-sized hands atop the surface of the mountain, and instantly, the stone of the mountain seemed to turn to liquid, slowly flowing outwards. In the blink of an eye, a square cave had appeared, and the walls of the cave even had some patterned carvings. What sort of technique is this? Linley and BB were stupefied. Don't be so shocked. Rice Gem laughed delightedly, then strode inwards, with the big fellow following Rice Gem into the cave. This big fellow is both mysterious and powerful. Linley sighed mentally in praise. In addition, Linley had never seen anything in Baruch's book regarding this big fellow. Whoosh! Shortly after they entered the cave, a stone board actually slammed down at the entrance, completely sealing it off from the outside world. The insides of the cave had actually been divided into several rooms, as well as a large living room. What do you think? Stunned by the technique of Ham, et. Rice Gem laughed as he sat down on a stone bench within the living room. Let me make the formal introductions. Ham's full name is Rayam Stonebreaker Lehong. He's my good friend, and a trusted emissary of my mother. Don't be fooled by his silence, he's quite clear-minded about things. A rare hint of a smile appeared on the face of the big, tower-like fellow. Rayam Stonebreaker? Linley glanced at him, then laughed and said, Linley Baruch. Hello, Linley. Rayam's voice thundered out, seeming to thrum and reverberate in that giant chest. Haha, from today forward, the power of our hunting squad will have increased dramatically. Rice Gem excitedly slapped the table. BB, your innate divine ability, God Ader, is definitely the sharpest attack our squad possesses. Linley, how about your own innate divine ability? What percentage of the power of the Azure Dragon's original innate divine ability does it possess? Linley said with a calm laugh, I can't give you percentages. All my innate divine ability can do is to make time move tens of times slower for the enemy. Good. Haha, wonderful. Rice Gem excitedly rose to his feet, his eyes glowing with violet light. Formidable. The big, Towering fellow rumbled in praise as well. Linley, with this technique of yours, our hunting squad is going to be much more powerful. Ricegem was very excited. Ricegem then grumbled unhappily, this really pisses me off, actually. Over the years, Riyam and I encountered quite a few commanders, but they weren't able to beat us and so they immediately ran away. Even when I use my amethyst space, if they wholeheartedly focus on fleeing, I'm unable to stop them. But if, at the critical moment, you were to use your innate divine ability on them, and then Riyam attacks, then we'll definitely be able to kill the target. Linley couldn't help but laugh. He and Bibi both had extremely powerful innate divine abilities. Their only weakness was, their own, personal level of strength was rather lacking. Their attack power and defense power was insufficient. But after joining this squad, each made up for what the other lacked. Haha, with the two of you, our hunting squad will be able to dominate this planar battlefield. If anyone dares gets close to us, into the range of that innate divine ability of yours, Linley, they will be finished. Ricegem was very happy. Actually, originally, he cared more about Bibi's innate divine ability. It was that, combined with the fact that he had a pre-existing relationship with Linley, that made him extend the invitation. But now, he discovered that Linley's innate divine ability was definitely the most superlative of supreme support abilities here on the planar battlefield. The planar war would go on for nearly 1,000 years. Linley's group was in no rush. They stayed in the cave for 3 days before heading out, and during these 3 days, Linley also learned from Ricegem a few things regarding the commanders of the planar battlefield. How many commanders would possibly dare to roam about the planar battlefield as they please? Only those with enough power would dare do a thing, otherwise, it would be lunacy. As for the weaker commanders, all of them are incredibly crafty. Many of them hide, not daring to reveal themselves, and rely on death god golems to scout. Upon encountering weak opponents, they'll fight, upon encountering strong ones, they won't come out. But of course, most form small squads of perhaps 2, 3, or even 4 or 5. The most important thing in a squad is mutual trust. Otherwise, if the squad mates begins to fight amongst themselves, that would be disastrous. Linley, Bibi, our target here in the planar battlefield is other squads. As for lone travelers, heh, we won't be able to kill the powerful ones, while the weak ones will be hiding and not dare reveal themselves. It will be very hard to kill one of them. It is best we engage in group battles against other squads. That will be more exciting, and also make it easier for us to gain badges. Ricegem and Linley discussed quite a few things, and Linley now understood that their earlier strategy of hiding and ambushing was a very low efficiency strategy. This was because virtually everyone who dared to travel about alone was exceedingly powerful. Fortunately, Bibi had been able to use his innate divine ability to kill Lancelot. Otherwise, Linley wouldn't have even a single badge. Linley, Bibi, Ricegem, and the silent Riyam continued to move forward. Haha, there are very few people who know what the 4 of us look like. This will make it easier for us to catch some big fish. Ricegem chortled. Linley, once the enemy reaches a certain distance from us, your sole mission will be to use your innate divine ability and make it impossible for him to flee for a period of time. The killing part? Leave that to us. Understood. Linley let out a calm laugh. Linley had to admit, his sole attack, amongst commander-level experts, could only be considered ordinary. When Linley was fighting alongside Bibi, they used a similar strategy. It's hard to find people though. Bibi stared at the surroundings and muttered. The planar battlefield was always so dark and cold. Raising his head, Linley looked at the multicolored spatial tiers in the sky. That cold, howling wind swept through the battlefield as the 4 of them stealthily advanced. They didn't hide, nor did they use death god golems, they just walked straight across. Linley frowned. Ricegem, I think we'd best split up and maintain some distance from each other. Otherwise, if the four of us are always together, most likely the other commanders will not dare approach us and stay far away. Linley said. Split up? Then how would we coordinate? Ricegem asked. Linley laughed. How about this? The two of us will divide into two squads. BB and I will separate, but the two of us have connected souls and will be able to sense each other's presences. Even if we can't see each other, we will still be able to find each other. Good idea. Ricegem nodded repeatedly. Then, right, Linley, you follow me. Riyam, you go with BB. Our two squads will maintain a distance of 3 kilometers. If battle begins, we'll be able to quickly cross this short distance. Ricegem made the arrangements, and Linley and BB had no objections. They immediately split up. Linley and BB were able to sense each other's locations, and thus, they were both able to sense the direction the other was headed. Less than half a day after they separated. Boss, we found a target. BB's surprised, delighted voice rang out in Linley's mind. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 26, The First Battle. Linley's eyes instantly lit up. Ricegem, they found a target. Linley sent through divine sense, while transforming into a blur that flew at high speed towards BB's location. A target? Ricegem was startled and delighted as well. His speed also increased, and he was actually a level faster than Linley. The distance of 3 kilometers was crossed in the twinkling of an eye. But by the time Linley and Ricegem arrived, they discovered that BB and Riyam were just standing there. BB, what's going on? The target? Linley had a guess as to what happened. That person was too crafty. As soon as I saw him, he immediately turned tail and fled instead of fighting back. BB said helplessly, a bitter look on his face, while the nearby Riyam said in a deep voice, the young master and I encountered this person not too long ago. As soon as this person saw me, he was so frightened he instantly fled. We encountered him before. Ricegem shook his head. Forget it. He can just consider himself lucky. As I see it, Riyam, you should slightly change your body. Your appearance is simply too easily distinguishable. Linley said with a laugh. The big fellow nodded slightly, then with a sound of acknowledgement, began to shrink from being a giant of 4 meters in height to an ordinary person 2 meters tall. Ricegem winked and laughed. Hey, in this shape, it's going to be quite hard to sit on your shoulders. Linley immediately thought back to how, when he had first seen Ricegem had been sitting on the giant's shoulders. Ricegem, let's continue to head out. Linley said with a laugh. Right. Ricegem nodded, then gritted his teeth. Hum and I have been in the planar battlefield for many years now, but we only have a single gold badge. This time, we have to get some more. Ricegem and Riyam had both come from the infernal realm, and so belonged to the side of the divine darkness plane. They, too, had crossed the stellar river and arrived on this side. You guys only have one as well. BB couldn't help but laugh. Humph, if I had your innate divine ability, I would have killed quite a few commanders already. Ricegem said with a sniff. Enough, let's head out. Linley, the two of us will go this way. Their forces separated once again. Because the geography of the planar battlefield was varied, with tall grass and hills everywhere, at a distance of 3 kilometers, it was generally not possible to see someone else. Whoosh! A cold wind howled drearily, and 2 figures advanced, one in front, one in the back. The leader was a white-robed man with long jade hair that drooped all the way to his waist. He had an astonishingly, breathtakingly beautiful face, and his skin was almost crystalline and translucent, as though he were a jade statue. In addition, in the center of his forehead, there was the seal of a crescent moon. He quietly walked, casually glancing at his surroundings, as though this planar battlefield was his garden. Behind him was a female warrior dressed in armor. "Milord, should we be looking for a place to rest? All of those commanders have hidden themselves deeply. When they see you come, milord, all of them are so terrified they all scamper away," the brown-haired female warrior said with a laugh. The jade-haired, white-robed handsome youth strolled forward and said, "Fine, then let's just look for a place up ahead to rest. It seems as though we don't need to be in a hurry to rest. We have some prey." The white-robed youth's lips crooked upwards, and the crescent moon in his forehead began to glow with green light. Linley's group had been traveling for half a month now. Although they had encountered a few targets, when they took a close look, they found that the targets were just death god golems. They ran into 5 death god golems, but not a single person who had dared to reveal himself. But Linley's group wasn't discouraged at all. After all, there were only so many commanders to begin with. Some were in the army camps, while others were in hiding. There weren't many who dared to roam around outside. Those supreme experts, all of them are indeed almost flawless. Linley chatted with Ricegem quite often over the course of their journey. Only now did Linley realize that Ricegem actually only had a single sovereign artifact, a sovereign weapon. Only, Ricegem naturally possessed an extremely powerful body and powerful soul. Although his body was inferior to BB's, his soul was far, far more powerful. Ricegem's true body had 108 spikes atop it, and the Amethyst Mountains, which contained vast quantities of amethysts, also had 108 caves. Linley's guess was, the Redbud Sovereign and the Amethyst Mountains definitely have a unique connection to each other. Ricegem is pretty much the same. I can understand why his soul is so powerful. After all, the Amethyst Mountains are a place where countless amethysts are generated. The Amethyst Mountains also had a large number of amethyst beasts, whose bodies were exceedingly tough. Naturally, Ricegem's body was also tough. On the whole, Ricegem was very balanced. Even if he didn't have a sovereign artifact, he would still be very powerful. Combined with a sovereign artifact, he was able to dominate the planar battlefield. Those sovereign's emissaries who acquire sovereign artifacts use them to cover up their flaws. Linley understood this principle. While Linley and Ricegem made their way through the planar battlefield, staring at their surroundings and looking for a target, Linley suddenly stared towards the front. Up ahead, 2 figures had appeared, one in front, the other behind. The 2 had discovered Linley and Ricegem as well, and they simply stood there fearlessly, staring at them. "Oh, them." Ricegem laughed. "A Kluwer Aokluwer of the Life Realm." Linley was startled. A Kluwer was the genius of the Divine Moon Elves, and one of the highly ranked supreme experts of the Life Realm. He trained in the Edicts of Life, and was skilled in soul attacks. He could be considered a perfect counter for Linley. "BB, we have our target. Hurry over." Linley hurriedly sent through the soul bond. Linley and BB were able to communicate at a very great distance. Even here in the planar battlefield, where divine sense would only stretch for 100 meters, he was still able to easily chat with BB at a distance of many kilometers. It must be understood that when Linley was not even a saint yet and was trapped within the Radiant Temple of the Radiant Church, he was still able to communicate spiritually with BB. At that time, Linley wasn't even capable of making his spiritual sense leave his body. This was one of the benefits of a spirit bond. The planar battlefield. Atop the desolate earth. Linley and Ricegem on one side, a Kluwer and his companion on the other. The 2 stared at each other. They paused slightly, but in the next instant, the 2 sides attacked without hesitation. "Linley, use your innate divine ability against that woman." Ricegem sent out excitedly, while at the same time, without hesitating at all, Ricegem transformed into a streak of violet light, shooting towards the front. "Understood." Linley hurried forward as well, flying towards the enemies at top speed. Humph. They are looking for death. Aklur, seeing the two charge towards him, couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. He just stood there, waiting for them to come. He had planned to attack them, only because he was afraid they would flee. But seeing Linley and Ricegem attack, he naturally was more than happy to just wait. Wouldn't it be excellent to just sit here and wait for them to come and be killed instead? Ricegem was in front, Linley was behind. When Linley was at a distance of 150 meters from the enemies, Linley's eyes suddenly flashed with azure golden light, while at the same time, an enormous coiling azure dragon phantom that was 1,000 meters long appeared behind Linley. That azure dragon head hovered above Linley, staring at its target. The brown-haired woman. The white-robed elfin youth, Aklur, was startled. Azure Dragon Clan. He now realized that Linley was using this technique against his servant. However, he still disdainfully stood there. The innate divine ability of the Azure Dragon Clan can at most impact the passage of time. I simply need to make it so that they won't be able to draw close for a short period of time. They can forget about harming my subordinates. The white-robed elfin man's body blurred, and he came attacking towards Ricegem. Ricegem cracked his lips into a grin. Down. Bang. A violet light exploded forth from Ricegem, creating an enormous sphere of hundreds of meters across. A terrifyingly powerful gravity instantly took effect on the body of the elfin man, Aklur. Aklur suddenly felt as though his body had become countless times heavier, and he couldn't help but sink downwards. As for Ricegem, he waved his hand out. Swish. A blurry light shot out, striking towards the brown-haired female warrior. The brown-haired female warrior seemed to have just recovered from the field of slow time. Faced with this attack, she wasn't able to resist at all, and the blurry light shot directly into her body. The brown-haired female warrior's body trembled slightly, and then collapsed to the ground. Whap! A white badge floated out from her body. So she was this weak. Ricegem shook his head disdainfully. Ricegem. The elfin man, Aklur, stood there staring coldly at Ricegem, his eyes seemingly filled with rage. You killed my servant, what, do you think you are able to overcome me? No, I don't think I can. Ricegem chortled and just stood there, facing the elfin man. Ricegem knew how strong Aklur was. If Linley and Bibi weren't with him, there was no way he would be able to kill Aklur. At their respective levels, they wouldn't be able to really do anything to each other. Aklur was only certain of who Ricegem was after Ricegem spread out his amethyst space. Otherwise, if he had known in advance, Aklur would have retreated long ago. Although I don't think I can beat you, today, I really want that gold badge of yours, so, sorry. Ricegem chortled. Aklur's face sank, but then he snickered as well. Oh, so you want to kill me and get my gold badge? By relying on who? That Azure Dragon punk behind you. Aklur didn't care at all about the death of his servant. After all, he had only brought the servant to the planar battlefield to attend to him. For battle, he himself was sufficient. Aklur looked carefully at Linley, as though wanting to tell how strong Linley was. After all, it seemed as though no one within the Azure Dragon clan had ever been able to threaten his life. No, I don't have that power. Linley said with a calm laugh. Linley knew as well that this Aklur was far more powerful than that elfin elder of the 8 great clans who had nearly killed Delia when he had sent her into that coma. In addition, Aklur had a defensive sovereign artifact. Boss, we're here. Bibi sent mentally. Wait for your chance, then make your move. Linley sent. Ricegem, I don't have the time to waste with you. I'm leaving now. Aklur let out a cold snort, then turned to leave. Swoosh. Swoosh. 2 figures landed on the path behind him, one tall figure and one short figure. It was Rayam and Bibi. Aklur's eyes narrowed. As he saw it, there were far too few people capable of killing him. He didn't believe the four of them were capable of it. He couldn't help but grow rather angry as he let out a low snort. Rice Gem, there's no point in us battling. Your behavior, however, makes me very angry. Today, let's have a little fight. Let's see if your soul attack is stronger, or if mine is. Linley's face changed. He was able to see quite clearly how suddenly, two translucent wings suddenly appeared from McClure's back, while at the same time, a dazzling green light shot out from the center of his forehead, instantly transforming into 16 green crescent moons. In a place as dark as this planar battlefield, the light of these green crescent moons was quite dazzling to behold. The 16 green crescent moons shot out in a devilishly arcing line, striking towards Rice Gem. Clearly, McClure only considered Rice Gem to be a threat, and didn't care about the other three at all. This wasn't his fault. He didn't fear any material attacks, and as for soul attacks, that was his specialty. What was there to fear? Over the course of countless years, he had never suffered in a competition in the soul. Hey, elf punk, are you looking down at me? McClure didn't even look at BB, but suddenly, from the corner of his eyes, he saw an enormous illusion appear. He couldn't help but turn to look, and as he did, the formerly completely confident McClure had his face instantly turn white and his eyes become full of terror. How can this be? That's... The enormous illusion of a God-Eater rat had appeared behind BB. Innate divine ability, God-Eater. Heh, even I can't block it? You block it? Go die. Rice Gem, seeing this, laughed. He felt all the more certain that having Linley and BB join forces with him was an extremely wise decision. With the God-Eater technique having emerged, McClure instantly slumped to the ground. Clink. A gold badge fell out of his body, and a beautiful set of green armor also emerged, falling out of McClure. The first battle of their hunting squad was a complete success. Book 19. Metamorphosis, Chapter 27, A Change. McClure's corpse just lay there on the desolate earth. He died. Linley sighed in his heart. McClure was an expert on the level of Rice Gem. Even high god paragons would find it hard to kill him. Aside from a sovereign acting against him, generally speaking, it would take a group of experts to kill an expert like him. But BB's innate divine ability, God-Eater, Linley couldn't help but look towards BB. At this moment, BB was by the side of the corpse of the elf in McClure. He let out a snort. You actually ignored me. Haha, BB, you really are the perfect counter to soul specialists who aren't at the paragon level yet. Rice Gem laughed while walking over, slapping his arm around BB's shoulders. It seems we are a perfect match. Your soul attacks are number one, and while my material attacks aren't number one, they are still at the very top. With us joining forces, who can stop us? Rice Gem glanced sideways at the corpse on the ground, then snickered. Hey, experts, this is what happens. Now that his most powerful body is dead, even if he has divine clones remaining, how much value could they possibly hold? Right at this moment. Humph. A cold snort rang out. Rice Gem suddenly moved, transforming into a violet blur which streaked across the skies. What's going on? Linley hurriedly turned to look as well, only to see Rice Gem chasing towards a certain direction, with a black blur fleeing from him. Linley couldn't help but feel shocked. There was someone else nearby? It seems just now, I was so focused on McClure that I didn't even notice that someone was snooping nearby. Linley carefully watched Rice Gem pursue and attack the fleeing person. Mid-pursuit, Rice Gem suddenly emanated a violet light from his body, which formed into his amethyst space. The fleeing black figure immediately began to move much slower, after having been caught by it. Swish! A violet light shot out from Rice Gem's hand, shooting forward like a meteor, so fast that the black blur wasn't able to dodge at all. Crackle, the violet light instantly traversed the less than 100 meters of distance that separated Rice Gem and the black blur. The nearby space began to ripple like water, and some faint spatial cracks could be seen as well. With a bang sound, the violet light drove into the black blur's body, and it immediately exploded, sending fragments shooting out in every direction, while that violet light finally solidified. This was a fairly short, 1.5 meter long cavalry lance that was completely covered with a dark violet color. But of course, it could also be used as a javelin, or for close quarters combat. A sovereign weapon. Linley understood that this was Rice Gem's one and only sovereign weapon. When Rice Gem throws this as a javelin, the power is as terrifying as this. It created spatial fractures. Linley clearly remembered how very minute fractures in space had appeared upon the lance being thrown. This was the first time Linley had ever seen someone capable of causing spatial cracks appear, here in the planar battlefield. This Rice Gem trains in the edicts of destruction, and his understanding in its profound mysteries is formidable to begin with. He is also very strong as well. Matching that with a sovereign weapon, it truly is as he said, his material attacks, amongst commanders, might not be the best. But it is at the very top. Linley now completely understood how powerful Rice Gem was. Soul attacks and material attacks, he approached perfection in both. If one had to point out a weakness, most likely, it was that he was a bit afraid of BB. BB's God Eater technique was the perfect counter to him, unless Rice Gem went and acquired a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. Unfortunately, although his mother was a sovereign, she couldn't just give him another one, he needed to acquire more military merits. Mother **ing, it's a death god golem. Rice Gem burst into a torrent of curses as he walked over. It is indeed a death god golem. No point in being angry. Linley said. Who knows where the person behind it is hiding? After realizing how powerful you are, he probably fled long ago. Each time I see a target, kill it, and find out afterwards that it was a death god golem, I feel pissed. Rice Gem pointed towards the gold badge on the ground with one finger. There's only a single gold badge, while there are 4 of us. How should we divide it, everyone? Linley and BB couldn't help but look at each other. A commander badge. To Linley, every single commander badge represented that he would be able to save another one of his family or friends. Linley deeply desired to acquire this commander badge, but Linley also understood that since the 4 of them had set up this 4-person hunting squad, they had to abide by the rules of it. He couldn't demand that others give up their spoils of war to him as well. Linley, what do you two think? Rice Gem looked over. As Rice Gem saw it, there was no need for him to divide between himself and Riyam, as the two were very close to each other. Although BB and Linley had just joined the hunting squad, although they were acquaintances, they actually didn't have a very deep relationship yet, and so he couldn't just make a casual decision. Let's do as we said originally. Linley said with a laugh. The 4 of us will divide any rewards equally. However, clearly, we only have a single gold badge here right now. How about this? Rice Gem, you and Riyam will each have 1 share, while BB and I will have 1 share. I imagine you two won't have any objections to this, right? Of course not. Rice Gem laughed as well. Rice Gem and Riyam wouldn't quibble over military merits, much like how Linley and BB wouldn't either. As for this commander badge, either of our 2 sides can take it. If you take it this time, then we'll take the next one. If we take it this time, then next time, you'll take it? Linley said with a calm laugh. Fine then. Rice Gem very straightforwardly reached out with his arm, snatched up the commander badge, then tossed it to Linley. You two just joined our squad, so we'll let you take the first one. The next commander badge we get is ours though. Linley accepted it, not standing on ceremony, and laughed while nodding. Fine. Next one is yours. Linley clenched the gold badge. He couldn't help but feel excited in his heart. Yet another one. Linley wanted to rescue his father, Yale, George, and Dixie, who had also died an unjust death. Dixie was Delia's one and only elder brother, after all. As for those who had died normal deaths, who had died deaths with no regrets, Linley didn't see the need to make them regain their memories. After all, the likes of Uncle Hillman had lived for centuries, with a full house of children and grandchildren. They had lived carefree lives, then died of old age. Since they had died with no regrets, why disturb them in their rest? But as for Yale, George, and his own father Hogg, they had all died miserable, unjust deaths. Linley, it's just a commander badge. Is it really worth you having such a look on your face? The nearby rice gem couldn't help but smirk while speaking. Linley awoke from his trance. He immediately laughed, then collected the gold badge. I was just thinking about a few things. The nearby BB sighed emotionally as well. Rice gem, you've come here to get enough badges so as to trade for a sovereign artifact, but although the boss and I also have come to acquire enough badges, our purpose is different. You don't understand how important these badges are to my boss. Oh. Rice gem immediately grew surprised. What's so important? BB immediately began to chat in secret with Rice gem, while Linley just shook his head and laughed. Rice gem, what should we do with this sovereign artifact? Linley said. What should we do? Just toss it there. Rice gem said. Linley and BB were both stunned. Toss it? BB said, startled. Rice gem gave it a casual kick, then snorted. Of course. What, do you think we should take it with us? The sovereign will come to reclaim it eventually, anyways. There's no point to taking it with us. In addition, Aklur clearly had other divine clones outside, so there's no way for us to use the sovereign artifact either. There's no point to bringing it. Linley and BB, upon hearing this, couldn't help but trade glances. Still, they had to admit that Rice Gem's words were reasonable. Let's go. Keep moving. Rice Gem said with a laugh. Given the power of our hunting squad, haha, what have we to fear, here in the planar battlefield? Haha. Linley couldn't help but to laugh as well. Their four-man hunting squad once more headed out, dividing once again into two squads, traveling at a distance of 3 kilometers or so. Next to a short hill within the planar battlefield. A golden-haired, black-robed man had a look of astonishment on his face. Who would have imagined that the news which has been circulating amongst the commanders about Beirut having come is false? The person who used that innate divine ability isn't Beirut, it is someone else. Aside from Beirut, there's actually someone else capable of that technique. This is terrible. And, by the look of it, that youngster with the straw hat is completely unrestrained and has no taboos, unlike Beirut who cares greatly about his status. The person who had used the death god golem and had seen BB kill Aklur was this man. I have to tell my friends about this news. The golden-haired man gritted his teeth, immediately fleeing. Most of the commanders in the planar battlefield, especially those who were within the same alliance, had some degree of pre-existing relationships with each other. They would all share some important news with each other. For example, when BB and Linley had arrived in the planar battlefield, that commander in the headquarters had planned to join forces with Linley and BB, and also provide them with some news. Only, because he didn't recognize the two of them, he didn't do it. The news that the person who used the innate divine ability God-Ader was a youngster who wore a straw hat rather than Beirut quickly spread through the commanders at an astonishing speed. At the sides of the stellar sea. Within an alliance base. Within an estate formed from elemental essence, a man dressed in sky blue robes was walking forward with large strides towards the gates. "My lord." The guards at the gates immediately opened it. They all knew that this person was a commander-level expert and a good friend of their own lord. "Brave Linley, why did you return?" A red-robed woman within the courtyard was drinking some wine. She smiled as she glanced at the blue-robed man who had walked in. "Didn't you go out to kill a few commanders, so as to acquire a few extra badges?" "Not anymore. I didn't expect that yet another variable came into play." The blue-robed man let out a snort, then sat down. Grabbing a bottle of wine, he raised his head and chugged it down. "Variable?" The red-robed woman was puzzled. The blue-robed man grumbled unhappily, "Wasn't there a rumor prior to this that Beirut had come? If it really was Beirut who had come, I wouldn't be afraid. Beirut and I have met before, and we can be considered to have something of a relationship. If I encounter him, he wouldn't act against me. In addition, someone as proud and arrogant as Beirut generally wouldn't lower himself to kill ordinary commanders, so long as they didn't offend him. It's precisely because I was under this impression that I went roaming about the planar battlefield. But who would have imagined that just now, a good friend of mine sent me the news that the person who used the God-Hater innate divine ability wasn't Beirut. It was a youngster wearing a straw hat." The blue-robed man shook his head. "Forget it. I don't have a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. It's best if I don't run around outside wildly. If I encounter that youngster, I'll die a damnably unfair death." Hearing this, the red-robed woman understood. "There's a second divine beast, God-Hater rat." The red-robed woman also understood how grave this news was. Amongst high gods, there were many people who understood how important it was to gain a high degree of insight into the soul, and there were many who were extremely skilled in soul attacks and defenses. Additionally, even amongst sovereign artifacts, soul-protecting sovereign artifacts were the hardest to forge. Generally speaking, even if a sovereign was to give an emissary an artifact, it would only very rarely be a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. Thus, soul-protecting sovereign artifacts were exceedingly rare. Additionally, many commanders were extremely confident in their soul defense abilities. For example, the likes of Reshape and Aklur would still be able to hold on, if just barely, against the soul attack of even a high god paragon. As they saw it, there was no point to acquiring a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. It was thus better to acquire a different type of sovereign artifact. But after Beirut suddenly rose to prominence, many people learned that the most terrifying soul attack amongst high gods wasn't that of a high god paragon, rather, it was Beirut's innate divine ability. But given the status which Beirut possessed, he would rarely lower himself to go massacre ordinary commanders. Thus, no one was worried about him. But now, yet another person had emerged who was capable of the God-Hater ability, a person no one knew. Those experts who were neither high god paragons nor had soul-protecting sovereign artifacts, they now began to worry. They no longer dared to confidently wander outside as they previously had. Those who did go outside hid, using death god golems to scout for them. "Haha, the appearance of this youngster," the red-robed woman began to laugh. There weren't many commanders who dared to freely wander the planar battlefield to begin with. Now, with people like you bowing out as well, most likely, the only people wandering the planar battlefield will either belong to extremely powerful squads or be truly invincible, unbeatable figures. Forget it. Wait for the final battle. I'll acquire the military merits during the final battle. If push comes to shove, I can even wait for the next planar war to finish acquiring enough military merits. Where on earth did this youngster come from? After leaving the planar battlefield, I'll need to make some investigations." The blue-robed man said with a sigh. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 28, 500 Years. In the desolate wilderness, Linley and Reshape, one tall, the other short, were advancing side by side. "What's going on? There's almost no one around." Reshape couldn't help but grumble and curse, his eyes filled with anger as he looked around. It's one thing for those weaker commanders to be hiding, but those fairly powerful ones, when Riyam and I were together, we ran into quite a few of them. But now, all of them are missing. The nearby Linley was silent. Linley was beginning to feel frantic as well. He couldn't help but look about at the battlefield, but there was nothing to see, not a single person. The planar battlefield seems to have suddenly grown much more barren. There's not many people visible now. When BB and I used death god golems to lure people in, we still discovered a few people. Linley couldn't understand either what was going on either. It had been 3 years since they had killed that elven male, a Kluer. It had been 3 full years, but Linley's group hadn't acquired another gold badge. It wasn't that Linley's group had grown soft-hearted, they didn't find any targets they could attack at all. During these 3 years, Linley's had encountered quite a few people, but all of them were either death god golems or truly supreme experts whom the 4 wouldn't be able to handle at all. But of course, there was also one time when they ran into another squad. That time, Linley's group had prepared to attack, because there were only 2 of them. But just as they were about to attack and to call BB to come over, they discovered that 3 more helpers rushed over to join the enemy squad. This squad was actually a 5-person squad. And, in terms of power, 2 were on the same level as Rice Gem. Once the battle began, perhaps they might be able to kill 1 or 2 of them, but their own side would also lose 1 or 2 people. It wasn't worth it. Linley. Rice Gem suddenly said amusedly. Hypothetically, if we were to be unable to acquire any commander badges during the remainder of the duration of this planar war, then Riyam and I really would have suffered a loss. After all, we gave you the first commander badge. Linley was stunned. All he could do was let out an awkward laugh. I'm kidding. Rice Gem pulled out a violet fruit, then began to eat it. How could we not acquire any more commander badges? Humph, if push comes to shove, we can wait for the final battle of the planar war. The 4 of us will join forces to kill a few more enemy commanders. Given our power, it won't be too hard if we join forces during the chaos of that battle and take advantage of some people. Rice Gem was clearly quite confident. Linley nodded slightly as well. Although he now had 2 commander badges, he was still some ways off from his target. Boss, we have a target. BB's voice suddenly echoed in Linley's mind. Linley's eyes lit up, and he grew excited. Rice Gem, we have a target. Linley immediately flew towards BB's direction. Oh. Rice Gem hurriedly flew after him as well. But by the time Linley and Rice Gem got there, they discovered that BB and Riyam were standing in front of a black-robed figure, whose arms were already torn off, revealing a metallic color beneath his shattered shoulder blades. BB, seeing Linley and Rice Gem arrive, turned and said resignedly, "Boss, it is a death god golem." Linley and Rice Gem were rather disappointed, but they had already been prepared for this. After all, the number of times this had occurred over the past 3 years was far too many. This death god golem actually isn't fleeing. Linley began to laugh. Why flee? It won't be able to escape anyhow. It's just a death god golem, after all. I have plenty of these toys. In addition, I'm quite curious about the second god Ader rat to appear in the countless planes of the universe. The metallic golem spoke out, and then looked towards BB with curiosity. Might I ask, what is your relationship with Baruch? Linley was startled. How did others know that BB was a god Ader rat? How did you know? BB said, surprised. The death god golem said, of course I know. You used your innate divine ability several times, causing that god Ader rat illusion to appear. Quite a few people have seen it already. At first, everyone thought it was Baruch, but afterwards, they learned that it was a youngster who wore a straw hat. When I saw you wearing a straw hat, I naturally recognized you. Ah! BB was rather stupefied. So it was his straw hat which had betrayed him. Now I get it. No wonder they all went into hiding and didn't dare to show themselves. Rice Gem said angrily. Of course nobody dares to show themselves. Everyone knows what Baruch's temperament is like, even if he came in, we wouldn't be too worried. But this youngster who no one knows is also capable of that technique. Nobody wants to treat their own life and future like a joke. The death god golem said casually. Once one was hit by that technique, one would be finished. Even if they had divine clones in the outside world, they would still topple down from their honored position at the peak of the world of deities. Hurry up and F***ck off. I won't wreck your death god golem. Ricegem said irritably. This really pisses me off. It's hard for me to locate these people, but I didn't expect all of them would hide away. They really are cowards. It wasn't cowardice, though, it was caution. The various commanders had all expended countless amounts of effort to reach their current levels of power. Even if they didn't acquire any military merits in this planar war, they could still go participate in the next one. After all, it occurred every trillion years, with 5 battles each time. To them, military merits were secondary concerns, their lives were the most important. Once their most powerful clones died, they would be finished. What should we do now? The normally taciturn Riyam knew that the situation looked bad as well. What can we do? Ricegem chewed on his lips. It was such a rare stroke of fortune for me to get BB's assistance. I really wanted to dominate those people, but all of them went into hiding. Humph, fine, then. Let's all find a place to rest as well. After we are finished resting, when the final battle occurs, we'll all emerge and slaughter them viciously. We'll acquire more military merits then. That's all we can do. BB said resignedly. Linley frowned slightly. Although other commanders might not care too much about how many military merits they acquired, as they could acquire more in the next planar war, Linley had no time to waste. Linley had to acquire sufficient military merits during this planar war. But, with so many people in hiding, what could he do? As I see it, let's go find a place to rest while at the same time, use our death god golems to lure people close. If we can lure in 1 or 2 commanders, that'd be good. Linley said. Right, makes sense. There are another 8 centuries from now till the end of this planar war. It really is possible for us to attract some people over the next 8 centuries. Ricegem nodded in approval. All right, enough thinking about it then. Let's go find a place to rest. BB was the first to move forward. Linley's group casually selected a tall mountain. By relying on Riyam's supreme technique, they set up a cave estate. Linley's group of 4 thus began to live here peacefully. As for controlling the death god golem to attract people, this mission was handed over to BB and Riyam, while Ricegem completely focused on training. As for Linley, naturally, he was more than happy to seize the opportunity to train hard. The planar battlefield fell into a period of strange tranquility. Aside from a few rare squads of extremely powerful experts, virtually all of the other solitary commanders went into hiding. Most were waiting for the final battle. Some were waiting to leave after the final battle, while others were waiting to participate. Although the final battle would be dangerous, if the commanders were cautious, they would have a survival rate much higher than that of ordinary soldiers. 500 years silently slipped away peacefully. The tall, desolate mountain. Within the quiet cave estate. Ricegem, BB, and Riyam were seated next to each other, drinking wine, eating fruit, and chatting casually. Linley really is too hard-working in his training. Ricegem couldn't help but glance outside towards a distant courtyard, where Linley was currently seated in the meditative position. It's good to be hard-working, but you have to take a rest. As Ricegem spoke, he took a huge bite of the fruit. My boss. Of course he is hard-working when training. Naturally, his training speed will be fast as well. BB said smugly. The habitually taciturn Riyam gave a rare nod and said, this Linley's training speed really is astonishing. It really is. Nearly 4 centuries ago, when Linley woke up, he said that he had already begun to completely fuse 4 profound mysteries of the laws of the earth. And how many years has this kid been training for? Just 2,000 years. How many years have I been training for? I've only fused 5 profound mysteries, myself. Ricegem said with a smirk. BB just rubbed his nose, not saying a single thing. In their 4-person hunting squad, he was the only one who had no right to say a single thing when the topic of conversation was fusing profound mysteries. Ricegem and Riyam had both fused 5 profound mysteries. Naturally, though, this was related to the fact that they had been training for far too long a period of time. Linley had trained for just 2,000 years, but had nearly fused 4 profound mysteries as well. But him? He hadn't fused a single thing. Humph. My innate divine ability is powerful though. This was how BB mentally consoled himself. Right at this moment, a terrifyingly powerful divine sense swept past their cave estate. Ricegem, Riyam, and BB's faces changed. Even the training Linley opened his eyes, staring towards the outside in amazement. Whoosh! Ricegem and the other 2 immediately flew to the outside courtyard. Someone was able to use his divine sense to investigate inside. How terrifying! Ricegem said in a low voice. It is either a soul mutate expert or a high god paragon. Riyam said. Linley was stunned as well. It must be understood that this cave estate was in the heart of this tall mountain. Even the corridor which led from the cave to the outside was 100 meters long. For someone to sweep the cave estate with divine sense meant that the divine sense stretched to hundreds of meters. Linley had refined countless amethysts, but his divine sense only stretched to 100 meters. At such a great distance, there were only 2 possibilities. A soul mutate or a high god paragon. Of course, a sovereign could also use his own sense, but Linley's group wouldn't be able to sense it at all if that had happened. Right. Linley's group of 4 emerged from the estate and looked towards the corridor that led to the outside world. In the vast, empty corridor, there was a single figure who was walking in towards them. This person was dressed in a long white robe, had white hair, and white brows. His white brows were nearly vertical, and his eyes were extremely long and slanted, and seemed to shoot out a freezing light. Just by walking forward, this white-robed, white-browed man made others feel an unconscious veneration towards him. Linley's face turned ugly. This person had once roamed the infernal realm, and had been known as the Bloodwind Fiend. The meaning of this nickname was that when the wind arose, blood would fly into the air, and people would die. Bayer Bayi. What are you doing here? Ricegem frowned, and a violet light emerged from his body. Oh, Ricegem. The white-robed, white-browed man let out a calm chuckle. Although Bayer had adventured through the infernal realm in the past, the many experts of the universe all believed that Bayer had come from the divine plane of wind, and that he was one of the supreme, king-like figures of that plane. Because, this person had already reached the paragon level. What has a high god paragon come for? Linley felt rather nervous. High god paragons were truly frightening. I didn't expect you'd come to the planar battlefield as well, Bayer. Ricegem said with a calm laugh. Originally, I had no plans to come here. The planar wars hold no meaning for me. However, I owed Akluer a favor. This Bayer said calmly. Akluer's most powerful life-type divine clone was killed by you, so he asked me to help him get revenge. Bayer said calmly, I don't like owing favors. And so, I came to the planar battlefield. The faces of Linley and the other 3 changed greatly. So Bayer had actually come at the request of Akluer. You actually owed him a favor. Ricegem frowned. High god paragons had already reached the peak of the universe. It was very rare for them to owe someone a favor, but once they did, they would definitely repay it. The 3 of you don't matter. I only need to kill one person. Bayer calmly stretched out his right hand, his crystalline finger pointing towards BB. Him. He was the one who killed Eclure. I will only kill him. Linley instantly grew frantic. Ricegem just laughed calmly. Bear, do you know what sort of relationship he has to Beirut? Beirut? Bear said calmly. Although he is hard to deal with, even if I do kill his grandson, what will he, Beirut, be able to do to me? Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 29, 4 against 1. In terms of fame, Bear's fame had shaken the various realms countless years before Beirut had appeared. As a high god paragon, he was someone whom even the sovereigns would fight over to make an emissary. After having been at the very peak of power for so many years, how could he possibly fear Beirut? More importantly, deep in his heart, Bear actually somewhat looked down upon Beirut. Beirut hadn't reached the high god paragon level, but because his body was simply too powerful and his innate divine ability was too monstrous, even if he encountered paragons such as Bear, Beirut wouldn't be any weaker. Many commanders, in fact, feared Beirut even more than Bear. He just relies on his innate divine ability. That's what Bear believed. Within the mountain cave estate, Bear was there by himself, against Ricegem, Linley, and the other two. The atmosphere, however, clearly seemed to indicate that Bear held the advantage. This is trouble. Linley was extremely panicked. Boss, if we can't beat him, then run. Perhaps we'll be able to throw him off. BB sent mentally. But boss, this paragon is very terrifying. Don't try to hold on if you can't, what matters is preserving your own life. Linley gave BB a glance. When Linley had been 8 years old, BB had begun to follow him. Even if he had to die, Linley wouldn't abandon BB. Bear. Linley stared at Bear, feeling resentment in his heart. If he had the power that Beirut had, then today, he wouldn't be so helpless. What the hell is Eclure doing? He was killed in the planar battlefield, and then asked someone to get revenge for him. He really mother***ing. Ricegem cursed, his violet pupils still staring fixedly at Bear. He called out in a shrill voice, Bear, listen up. The person you want to kill belongs to my squad. It was my squad which worked together to kill Eclure. If you want to kill, then you'll have to kill all 4 of us. Bear's forehead creased slightly. Those 2 forceful white brows seemed as sharp as knives, and a baleful aura began to gather between them. Ricegem, don't get involved. Bear said coldly. To kill an entire squad? Kill all 4 of them? No matter what, Bear wouldn't have the courage to kill Ricegem. That was the only child of the Redbud Sovereign. If the enraged Redbud Sovereign truly wished to kill him, although he, Bear, as a high god paragon, had the ability to stay alive and flee, his only option would be to flee into a material plane. He didn't want to have to forever hide within a material plane. Eclure was killed by this god-eater rat. Today, I am only killing him as well. The 3 of you, off to one side. Bear's voice was fierce, and his narrow eyes seemed like the savage, sinister eyes of a lone wolf. Crackle, Linley's body suddenly became covered with azure golden draconic scales, while at the same time, his body moved slightly to stand in front of BB. Linley just stood there, staring at Bear fixedly. Boss. BB actually laughed. He wanted to make Linley leave, but Linley's reaction was exactly what BB had thought it would be. Over the course of countless years, during each life and death crisis, neither the 2 brothers had ever fled and left the other behind. Ricegem and Riyam moved slightly as well to block in front of BB. Thank you. BB laughed. For what? We're brothers. You and me, together, form a powerful team. We can't possibly do without you. Ricegem chortled. Bear couldn't help but frown. The 3 in front of him had clearly already made their decisions. They clearly weren't willing to just think of their own good. I always hear people talk about how incredible paragons are, but I've never given one a try. Ricegem snickered. The other three were prepared to fight at any moment as well. Very well. Bayer said calmly. His lips were very thin, making him look very mean and sinister. Linley was staring at Bayer the entire time, but suddenly, Linley felt his vision grow blurry. The white-robed man that had been tens of meters away suddenly turned into a blur. Linley, Ricegem, and Ryam weren't able to react before the white-robed man's figure charged into their midst. His speed was incredible. He was definitely the most terrifyingly fast person Linley had ever seen. The wind element specialized in speed to begin with. One could only imagine how fast a paragon of wind was. Too fast. I couldn't see his body clearly at all. Linley's face changed. He couldn't even see the enemy movements. How, then, was he supposed to fight back or to block? Blackstone space. Linley had no other choice. The only thing he could do was to execute his Blackstone space, and a blurry earthen yellow light instantly filled the courtyard. Not just him, actually, Ricegem was also badly startled by Bayer's speed, and had also hurriedly set up an amethyst space. The two spaces intersected, but the gravitational power didn't multiply, rather, the stronger amethyst space held sway. HRM. Bayer's terrifying speed suddenly slowed down. However, currently, Bayer had already reached BB's side. Because of the amethyst space and blackstone space, BB was now able to clearly see that Bayer had already reached him. Bayer himself couldn't help but frown slightly as his speed slowed drastically, but he still struck out with the edge of his right palm like a blade, casually chopping down towards BB. BB. Linley, Ricegem, and Ryam weren't able to rescue him at all at this moment. It seemed like a very ordinary palm blow. That crystalline, almost jade-like palm landed towards BB, but the strange thing was, space didn't even ripple. It seemed as though the air itself had calmed down. BB was so terrified, his face changed dramatically. Boss, I can't move. What a powerful restrictive force. BB's body was unable to make any large movements, he was just barely able to raise that Godspark dagger, but the powerful restrictive force made it so that he wouldn't be able to block with it. Even though it was in his hand. BB's voice rang out in Linley's mind. What? Can't move. Linley wasn't able to react in time. Watching the palm blow descend, BB only had one option, using his supreme technique, his innate divine technique. An enormous illusion of a God-Eater rat appeared behind BB, and the effects of his innate divine ability, God-Eater, immediately took effect on Bayer. Even though I won't be able to kill you with it, at least I'll make you suffer a bit. This was what BB thought. At the same instant he used his technique, Bayer's palm blow landed as well. Chop. That jade-like palm chopped down at the center of BB's chest. With a tremendous bang, sound, a very low sound rumbled. Like a bubble being popped, when the palm blow descended, the formerly stilled space suddenly tore apart, and right in front of the palm, a terrifying spatial rip that was multiple meters long suddenly appeared. This was the planar battlefield. And yet, such an enormous spatial tear had been created. Bang! Without being able to resist at all, BB was knocked flying backwards, smashing into the rocky mountainside. With a boom sound, the Rocky Mountain terrace suddenly had a meter-wide crevice appear, and the entire side of the mountain cracked as large amounts of rubble flew out. As for BB, the force of this palm blow had knocked him completely out of the 100+ meters thick mountain. Hurry up, let's go. Ricegem hurriedly sent mentally. Swoosh. 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 Linley, Ryam, and Ricegem flew out through the tunnel at almost the same instant towards the outside. Bayer didn't stop them. He just laughed calmly, and then his body swayed before he too disappeared from the courtyard. As Linley's group of three flew out, then saw the distant BB. The clothes BB wore, formed out of energy to begin with, had all blown apart, and a terrifying, Clearly visible white scar was on Bibi's chest. Linley, seeing the situation, couldn't help but feel relieved. Bibi's material defense truly is formidable. Bayer, although powerful, isn't as powerful as the sovereign had been. A casual blow from one of the branches of the abyssal fruit tree had caused Bibi's skin to split and his flesh to tear. Clearly, Bayer was a bit weaker. However, that palm blow of his had actually caused Bibi to be bound and unable to move, and had even created such an enormous rift in space. One could imagine how terrifying the attack power had been. Fortunately, the recipient of that palm edge blow was Bibi. If it had been someone else, that person probably wouldn't have been able to take a single blow. That freak. We aren't able to hold him off. Let's hurry and flee. Ricegem hurriedly sent through divine sense. In the past, they had heard talk of how formidable high god paragons were, but hadn't personally seen one in action. That simple blow, however, had caused Ricegem to no longer have any confidence to fight. His material defense wasn't as monstrous as Bibi's. The material defense of God Ader Rats really lives up to its name. A calm voice rang out. Linley and the other three were stunned. They realized that Bayer's white-robed figure had appeared in midair. Linley's heart sank. It makes sense. Given the power which Bayer displayed, even if we use Sovereign's might, we would at most be able to fight on par with him. There's no way we would be able to escape his attacks. Bayer's speed was a source of tremendous pressure for the others. My material attacks in the wind style and the destruction style can both be considered to be at the pinnacle. Bayer calmly swept the four with his gaze. I didn't expect that blow of mine wouldn't be able to break through the defense of a God Ader Rat. Very well, then, God Ader Rat Kid, I rarely use my sovereign weapon. Today, I will use my sovereign weapon to send you on your way. I refuse to believe that your defense will be able to withstand my most powerful sword attack. Linley, Bibi, Ricesham, and Ricegem were all stunned. Bayer waved his hand, and within it, a long sword that was as thin as the wings of a cicada appeared, glowing with green light. Linley's heart clenched. Bayer wasn't a divine beast, his body was ordinary. But by relying on his understanding of the profound mysteries as a paragon, Bayer's casual palm blows had already reached such a terrifying level. If he then used a sovereign artifact to use his most powerful attack, would Bibi's defense still be able to withstand it? Linley didn't have any confidence in that at all. Sovereign weapon. Ricegem's eyes instantly turned as round as the moon, and then he shouted explosively through divine sense, "Flee, quick, flee." Ricegem's body once more emanated his amethyst space, covering Linley, Bibi, and Riyam. Immediately, their four-person squad, ignoring all else, frantically fled towards the stellar river. Fleeing. Bayer let out a disdainful laugh. Flee by relying on speed? That was impossible. Whoosh. Bayer's body flickered, and he immediately moved to pursue. A dazzling amethyst space spread out. Linley, Ricegem, and the other two were at the center of the amethyst space and continued to flee into the distance. Ricegem also helped Bibi increase his speed. Ricegem, we are just going to flee, like this. Linley sent frantically through divine sense. The only method now is to flee to the stellar river. And then, we'll find a safe path through the stellar river to the center, then hide in one of the giant floating boulders. At that time, when Bayer comes over, we'll knock him directly into one of the spatial tiers. We won't be able to kill him, but we'll be able to make him disappear forever within the spatial tier. Ricegem sent mentally. However, I don't know if we'll make it to the stellar river. Linley had no other ideas either. Ricegem's method was indeed their only option. Haha, Ricegem, using your gravitational space against me is useless. Wild, confident laughter rang out in Linley's mind. Right at this moment, Linley and the other three, who were keeping a close watch on Bayer at all times, realized that he had flown in front of them. A wild burst of energy blasted forth from Bayer, instantly causing an area within 1,000 meters to instantly begin to spatially distort as the wild energy waves lashed about. Linley's group of 4 could feel the effects of this technique as space itself seemed to constrict them. How is this possible? Linley also trained in the laws of the wind, and knew that of the 9 great profound mysteries, there were the profound mysteries of spatial wind, but that sort of restrictive power was negligible for high gods. But who would have imagined, that when a high god paragon used this technique, even Ricegem would be affected? Their speed slowed dramatically. Swoosh! Bayer flew directly into the amethyst space. Although his speed dropped, he was still much faster than Linley's group of 4 now was while under the spatial binding. Bayer flew at high speed towards BB, but he lowered his head to look down at the sovereign artifact in his hand, as though it was a dear lover of his. Bayer very casually swung out with his sovereign weapon, and instantly, the already distorted space tore apart like a piece of rotten cloth. A terrifying spatial tear that was 100 meters long suddenly appeared. This 100-meter-long spatial tear was a rip in space that was a finger thick. Following the movements of the sovereign weapon, it landed directly on the body of BB, who had been unable to dodge. At the same time, the sovereign weapon shot out in every direction with arrow-like rays of energy, each of which caused minute spatial fractures. Slash. A thin fracture slashed past Linley, who wasn't able to dodge. It very easily tore through Linley's draconic scaled defense. A large chunk of flesh and bone was directly torn from Linley's arm. But Linley's attention was completely focused on BB. His face changed dramatically. BB. Linley was only hit by the side effects of the attack, but BB was hit by the sovereign weapon head-on. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 30, Canteen. What a terrifying fellow. BB was utterly frightened as well. That palm-edge blow from earlier had already made him feel great danger. BB himself knew that this full-force sword blow from a sovereign weapon was something which Baruch might be able to deal with bare-handed, were he here, due to his insights into the profound mysteries. But BB was no Baruch. He definitely wouldn't be able to take it head-on so easily. My insights into the laws are far too inferior to Grandpa's. I'd best not try to push it. BB didn't hesitate at all. As that sword chopped down, within his sea of consciousness, an adorable little god-eater rat instantly activated a drop of destruction-type sovereign's might. BB had 2 bodies as well. One was his divine darkness clone, while the other was his saint-level original body. Only, the saint-level original body remained in the shape of a god-eater rat. It was much like how Baruch's 3 sons all had original bodies that were in the form of rats. Normally, the original bodies were merged into the divine clones. BB understood that if his divine darkness clone died, his original body would unquestionably die as well. Boom! A black light emerged, covering BB's entire body as he was once more knocked away at high speed, smashing viciously into the ground. With a bang sound, a deep crevice appeared in the earth. But his body wasn't damaged at all. Thank goodness. Linley let out a sigh of relief. Ricegem, Ryam, and Linley all flew towards BB at high speed. BB. Linley hurriedly helped BB up. Heh, boss, I'm fine. He wasn't even able to scratch me. BB chortled. However, Linley, Ricegem, and Ryam didn't relax their vigilance. BB had used up a drop of Sovereign's might in order to escape the earlier tribulation. Linley couldn't help but to look back towards Bayer, who stood there not moving. Bayer was looking at BB with curiosity. Sovereign's might. Bayer wasn't angry at all. God-eater rats really are an incredible type of divine beasts. One worthy of me using a drop of Sovereign's might as well. Bang! A faint green light suddenly erupted forth like flames from Bayer's body, but then retracted back into it. Not a single hint of it was dissipating. Clearly, as a high god paragon, he could perfectly control Sovereign's might. This scene caused Linley and the other 3 to feel terror in their hearts. He is using Sovereign's might as well. Linley called out mentally in alarm. Not just a sovereign weapon, but also using Sovereign's might. Ricegem was so angry, he wanted to curse. For Bayer to do this was absolutely too abusive. Bayer actually had a hint of a smile on his lips. He looked at Bibi. To let me use both a sovereign weapon and Sovereign's might, even in death, you should feel proud. After speaking, his body once more flickered forward. Although Ricegem's amethyst space was always active, Bayer's speed was still so fast, that Linley and the other two weren't able to block at all. Although no aura of sovereign power emanated from Bayer's body, he clearly had already used it. He used Sovereign's might. Bibi won't be able to hold on. Linley worried mentally. Immediately, an enormous coiling azure dragon phantom appeared in the air behind Linley. At this critical moment, not hesitating at all, Linley used his own innate divine ability, Dragon Roar. Bayer's soul heard the roar of the dragon as well. Unconsciously, Bayer's body paused for a moment, but afterwards, Bayer's speed returned to normal. That bit of influence was negligible for him. Linley felt sourness as well. Bibi's innate divine ability isn't capable of doing anything to a high god paragon, and it seems this technique of mine is also negligible for him. Linley had a certain feeling that when he used this technique against Bayer, it was like he was an ant trying to shake a tree. Perhaps this was a very special ant, but the only result was that the leaves of the tree trembled slightly. Bibi. Linley felt agonized at his helplessness, and his soul howled in misery. Shkree! An exceedingly ear-piercing howl rang out, carrying a certain wild savagery. Bang! Space twisted and coiled about, and then multiple spatial tiers appeared. Bibi was once again knocked backwards, blood flying everywhere. Seeing the brilliant blood, Linley's face instantly turned white. Before this, he had still held some hope, but Linley didn't actually despair yet either. Because he could still feel Bibi's existence. Haha, you want to kill me? Grandpa's words really were correct. We God-Eater rats have the #1 defensive strength in all the planes of the universe. If I don't use Sovereign's might, my body is like a divine spark. After using Sovereign's might, there is no high god capable of killing me. Bibi called out, seeming to be rather crazed. Linley discovered, to his astonishment, that although Bibi's chest did indeed have a wound carved into it, with fresh blood flowing, the wound wasn't too deep. How can that be? Bayer stared at Bibi in astonishment. His full-strength sword blow still wasn't able to kill him. Humph. My muscles and my skin are equally tough, but the hardest part of my body is my bones. The bones throughout my body are infused with a large amount of divine spark essence. Haha, just now, I was afraid, because in the past, when that sovereign badly injured me with one blow, my bones were broken. I thought that after using Sovereign's might and with a sovereign weapon, your attack would be comparable to that sovereign's attack. Bibi boasted. Although Baruch had previously told Bibi how terrifyingly great the defensive power of a God-Eater rat was, and although Bibi had always been very self-confident. At the Abyssal Mountain, his defenses were easily shattered by the Abyssal Fruit Tree, and even his bones had been broken. This caused Bibi to begin to doubt himself. As he saw it, a high god paragon, using a sovereign weapon with Sovereign's might, should be comparable to a casual blow from a sovereign. But now, it seemed, that although the attack power of a high god paragon was indeed terrifying, compared to a sovereign, he was still vastly inferior. Haha, formidable, formidable. Ricegem began to laugh delightedly as well. Bibi, you thought just because he used Sovereign's might and a sovereign weapon that he would be comparable to a sovereign? Then you are ridiculously mistaken. High gods, compared to sovereigns, are far, far too weak. Bibi, what makes sovereigns so powerful isn't their sovereign artifacts or their sovereign power, rather, it is their will. An attack that contains a sovereign's will is a truly terrifying attack. Linley and Bibi were both stunned. A sovereign's will? Will was something that was incorporeal, how could it be powerful? Aside from high god paragons, if a sovereign wishes to kill a high god, there's no need to even lift a finger. The sovereign only needs to wish it. That's what a sovereign's will is. Ricegem laughed loudly. A high god that uses sovereign's might and a sovereign using sovereign's might, the difference in power is more 10,000 times, because of the will of the sovereign. Linley now understood. He had heard long ago that a sovereign could kill a high god with but a thought, and that only high god paragons could slightly resist. At that time, Linley hadn't understood, how could a high god be killed by a mere thought? Why? So it seemed, that there was something known as the sovereign's will which existed. The will of a sovereign is this powerful. Linley didn't understand why. But Linley didn't have time to ask Ricegem. Because at this moment, Bayer's face finally grew solemn. He stared coldly at Bibi. God Ada rats refine divine spark essences to strengthen their own body. As far as material defenses go, amongst all the varied divine beasts, you God Ada rats truly can be ranked number 1. I admit that I won't be able to injure you with material attacks. Then, listen to a song of mine. As soon as his words fell, Linley, Ricegem, Bibi, and Rayam began to hear a certain melody in their minds. That song constantly echoed throughout their mind, carrying with it a strange, magical power. When he first heard it, Linley was able to resist for a second or two, but after that, he became entranced by the music and entered a dazed state. And, as soon as he heard that song, Linley's divine clone had immediately, unstintingly, used up a drop of water-type sovereign's might. Linley's earth-type sovereign's might had been used up long ago, and he only had 2 drops of water-type sovereign's might. By using up a drop now, he would only have 1 more remaining. Of the group of 4, only a single person immediately regained his faculties after being momentarily dazed. That was Ricegem. His accomplishments in the soul were exceedingly great. Linley, Rayam, and Bibi had all entered a dazed state, but fortunately enough for Linley and Rayam, Bayer didn't want to kill them, just make them dazed. As for Bibi, just as his soul entered a dazed state, he also began to suffer a strange soul attack. Logically speaking, in a dazed state, one wouldn't know to use sovereign's might to resist. Generally speaking, when faced with the soul attack of a high god paragon, the result would be death. However, Bayer, enough. Ricegem growled, launching a soul attack towards Bayer as well. How can this be? Bayer paused his attack as well. Linley, Bibi, and Rayam regained their mental clarity, and Linley felt cold sweat drip down his back. Even after using sovereign's might, I wasn't able to resist. However, I didn't die. It seems he didn't attack. Linley understood that without him actively controlling his damaged soul-protecting sovereign artifact, it definitely wouldn't be hard for this person to kill him. But he hadn't died. Clearly, Bayer didn't want to kill him. How can this be? You have a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. Bayer looked at Bibi. Bibi shook his head. I just have a soul-protecting artifact. Impossible. A soul-protecting artifact capable of blocking my soul nirvana melody. You definitely have a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. Bayer wasn't willing to believe it. Bayer now had finally lost his earlier confidence. He stared at Bibi. How can you have a soul-protecting sovereign artifact? You are a sovereign's emissary. Bibi shook his head. Soul-protecting sovereign artifact? Grandpa told me that it was a soul-protecting artifact. Bibi didn't understand it. Linley finally relaxed. Whether it was a soul-protecting artifact or a soul-protecting sovereign artifact, clearly, Bayer wasn't able to do anything to Bibi. Although Bayer was terrifying, and most likely would be able to easily kill Linley, Ricegem, or Rayam, he wasn't able to kill Bibi. BB's material defense and soul defense had both reached monstrous levels. According to legends, the blood-rich sovereign bestowed a soul-protecting sovereign artifact to Baruch. I didn't expect that he would actually transfer it to you. Bayer laughed coldly. Everyone knew that Baruch had a soul-protecting sovereign artifact, but Bayer now believed that Baruch had actually transferred the soul-protecting sovereign artifact to BB. Hey, what else are you going to do? You aren't able to kill BB. Aren't you going to leave? Ricegem snorted. Bayer took a deep breath, regaining his calm. If I'm not able to kill him, then I will push him into a region of chaotic space. Bayer said coldly, while stretching out his hands. He was standing in midair, and suddenly, with him at the center, multiple strands of faint green energy ribbons sprang out from his hands. Those 100-plus-100-meter energy ribbons all coiled towards BB. Push him into chaotic space. Linley was stunned as well. Roar! Ricegem suddenly let out an absolutely enraged growl, and behind Ricegem, the illusion of an enormous monster that was over 100 meters tall suddenly appeared. This monster had 108 spikes on its back, and was a monster that Linley was very familiar with. It looked just like the juvenile amethyst beast Linley had previously seen. Instantly, 108 rays of violet light exploded forth from Ricegem's body, each filled with black-colored sovereign power. With Ricegem at the center, those rays of violet light completely covered and surrounded Linley, BB, and Riyam, actually forming a black, spherical cocoon which was covered with violet light. Amethyst Rampart. Bayer frowned. The amethyst space was actually just an innate supreme technique of Ricegem's. In truth, it couldn't be considered a divine ability. Divine abilities consumed a tremendous amount of spiritual energy. This amethyst rampart was Ricegem's true, innate divine ability. Once this technique appeared, there was no way for Bayer to break through the amethyst rampart for now as well. Moments later, the amethyst rampart disappeared. The amethyst rampart couldn't actually be sustained for very long. Ricegem, it seems you insist on protecting this god-eater rat. Bayer said coldly. Fine, then. I admit that with this god-eater rat having used Sovereign's might, I'm unable to kill him. However, once his Sovereign's might dissipates, I refuse to believe that he'll be able to escape my sword again. Given the speed of my sword, I trust that you won't be able to block at all. Linley frowned. Bayer's words were reasonable. Although BB had used a drop of Sovereign's might, it was constantly dissipating. Soon, it would be completely gone. BB's material defense was indeed strong, but when he used Sovereign's might, his defense was still breached. He had to rely on his bones to take the blow head-on. But if BB didn't have any Sovereign's might left, while Bayer was still able to perfectly control his own Sovereign's might without wasting it, given that Bayer would be able to use it for a very long time, when BB's ran out, would BB be able to block? Boss. I've been eating divine sparks for many years, but the number that I've eaten isn't enough yet. My bones aren't as tough as Grandpa's yet. If I don't use Sovereign's might, while that Bayer uses both a sovereign weapon and sovereign power, my skull probably wouldn't be able to resist that sword of his. BB sent frantically. Linley began to feel nervous as well. BB's sovereign power was constantly dissipating. But Bayer? Not a hint of it was leaking out. How were they supposed to compete against him? Ricegem stared. What, you want to compete with me in seeing who has more Sovereign's might? Bayer was startled. Ricegem turned towards Linley and BB and laughed. Linley, BB, I forgot to tell you something after you two joined my hunting squad. Since you two are members of my squad now, I, as the captain, should treat you without holding anything back. As he spoke, Ricegem made a tossing motion, and 2 rays of violet light flew towards Linley and BB. Linley and BB immediately stretched their hands out to receive it. Linley lowered his head to look at it. It was a canteen that was completely made out of carved amethysts. This sort of canteen, although quite intricately designed, was familiar to Linley. When he had been in the Yulan continent, ordinary soldiers would always carry these types of canteens with them. Is this a water canteen? Linley was puzzled. Linley reached out with his divine sense, passing through the obstruction of the amethysts, to inspect the insides of the canteen. And when he did, he was badly shocked. Gaia. Destruction type sovereign's might? This, an entire canteen. BB called out in shock as well. Linley was similarly stunned. He, too, realized that this canteen was actually filled with liquefied sovereign's might. An entire canteen full of it? Take it. The young master gave me a canteen as well. Rayam said. Linley and BB stared towards Ricegem, stunned. Ricegem snickered, then waved his hand. Just take it. It's just destruction type sovereign's might. My mother has plenty of it. She has an entire lake filled with it, so I filled a few canteens with it. I have plenty. You keep it. Those Redbud Army soldiers have a salary. You guys are my squad mates, and this can be considered your salary. To Ricegem, the only son of a sovereign, of course this was something that didn't matter much. Sovereigns agreed amongst themselves to only give a single sovereign artifact to deities, but there was no limit to the amount of sovereign's might they could bestow. A canteen. Linley felt his head grow dizzy. Sovereign's might was normally measured out by the drop. A canteen of sovereign's might? How many drops is that? Linley couldn't even imagine it. Bayer felt a headache as well. Good heavens. He was a high god paragon, true, but although a sovereign might give him some sovereign's might, the sovereign naturally wouldn't treat him as she might treat her own son, filling an entire lake with sovereign's might and letting her son take as much of it as he wanted. Compete with the son of a sovereign in sovereign's might. Bayer felt resigned. Ricegem rubbed his nose. Bayer, my divine clone had already informed my mother of what is going on here. Although my mother won't be able to make it here immediately, she can arrange for some people to come. I imagine that as time goes on, my mother will personally come to the planar battlefield. Sovereigns generally wouldn't interfere in the matters of high gods. But it was only natural for a sovereign to interfere when her own son was in danger. And not all sovereigns were the same. Generally speaking, if an ordinary person became a sovereign, that person might have countless children and so wouldn't care too much about them. But the Redbud sovereign was like a divine beast, an exceedingly rare, unique individual. She had only a single son. Whew. Bayer shook his head and laughed bitterly. This god Adorat's defense is indeed powerful. Although I'm not able to kill him, I don't consider it as being a loss of face. At least I tried. There's nothing Eklur will be able to say to me. Bayer gave Ricegem's group a final glance, and then his body flickered and disappeared as he left. Linley and BB each held a canteen, staring as Bayer departed. Ah, he finally left. Ricegem let out a long breath. A high god paragon. I was afraid that this fellow would go crazy. Fortunately, I managed to scare him off. Ricegem was frightened as well. If Bayer really did go crazy and decide to kill them all, Ricegem wouldn't even have time to cry. At worst, Bayer would just have to hide in a material plane and never go to the divine planes or the higher realms again. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 31, The Number 1 Clan. After Bayer left, Linley let out a sigh of relief as well. Compared to a high god paragon, I most likely would only be able to preserve my life if I had a defensive sovereign artifact and a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. Linley had been rendered speechless by Bayer's attack power, and the constrictive power of it had been able to cause space itself to twist and distort. The disruptive power exceeded even Ricegem's amethyst space. Upon encountering a paragon, Only someone like BB whose material defense and soul defense were both at the very peak would be capable of staying alive. Wait. Even if my defenses are powerful, Bayer would probably still be able to throw me into a field of spatial chaos. When Linley thought of this, he felt all the more terrified by the might of a paragon. Previously, Linley had seen quite a few experts who had fused 5 profound mysteries. Linley had thought a paragon would be powerful, but not ridiculously so. But upon encountering one, Linley realized paragons, just by waving their hands, could easily cause space to twist and distort, and tear the world apart. Between fusing 5 profound mysteries and becoming a paragon, there was a massive, qualitative rise in power. Bayer won't come again, will he? A low voice rang out. Linley turned his head to look. The speaker was the big fellow, Ryam. BB, some dirt and dust on his face, said quickly, "Of course not. He is a paragon, after all. Since he left, how could he come back? Even if he came back, I'm not afraid of him." BB's words caused Linley, Ricegem, and Ryam to all look at him. "You aren't afraid?" Ricegem had a rather disbelieving tone to his voice. Actually, Ricegem himself was afraid. If Bayer truly went insane, he could kill Ricegem, Ryam, and Linley, then drag BB into a region of chaotic space. The price would just be that he would face the pursuit and attack of the Redbud Sovereign, and would have to forever hide within a material plane. Ricegem was afraid, and Linley and Ryam felt the same way. In front of Bayer, they weren't able to resist at all. BB, unafraid. Stared at by the other 3, BB let out an awkward laugh. "Fine, to be honest, of course I'm a bit scared. In front of that Bayer, I feel as though all I can do is stand there and be beaten. I'm not able to resist at all. That strange song of his made me lose consciousness. Enough, he's left, so this is at an end. I hope in the future, I won't run into that Bayer again. Unless I'm at Grandpa's level of power." Linley, hearing this, couldn't help but laugh. He then looked towards Ricegem. This time, they truly had to thank Ricegem. Fortunately, Ricegem, you used the Sovereign to threaten him. Linley laughed with a sigh. Humph. That was all talk. By the time my mother actually made it here, Bayer would have fled long ago. Ricegem pursed his lips. Fortunately, Bayer wasn't willing to go all out for the sake of Eclure. Linley nodded slightly as well. If Eclure and Bayer had a relationship that was as close as Linley and BB's, most likely, Bayer really would have ignored all else to kill them. Fortunately, the two didn't have a relationship at that level yet. Ricegem, this Sovereign's might, Linley only now thought of the canteen of Sovereign's might in his hand. Good heavens, a full canteen. What a terrifying fortune this was. Ricegem, just now, you just wanted to shock Bayer and let him know that there was no way he would be able to kill BB, which is why you brought out this canteen of Sovereign's might. Now that this is at an end, you can take it back. Linley immediately handed the amethyst canteen back to Ricegem. It wasn't that Linley didn't want the Sovereign's might. If it had only been 1 or 2 drops, Linley would have accepted it. But this was an entire canteen. This was too precious, something Linley felt was too hot to hold. While working together with Ricegem, Linley hadn't made any great contributions, so how could he receive a canteen of Sovereign's might? As the saying goes, if no merits were rendered, none should be recorded. To receive a treasure without having accomplished anything? Linley felt uneasy. BB was startled. Here you go. BB did the same thing. Hey. Ricegem stared at Linley and BB, then said angrily, Linley, BB, what are you two doing? Humph, if you are going to be so insincere, we might as well just split up the squad. You go your way, and Ryam and I will go ours. You two don't treat me as brothers anyhow. As for the canteen of Sovereign's might? I, Rice Gem, have never taken back something I gifted out. If you don't want it, then toss it. Linley felt speechless and resigned. Haha, boss, Rice Gem isn't the stingy sort. BB snickered, slapping his arm around Rice Gem's shoulders. Just take it. BB was rather unwilling to part with it to begin with, only, having seen Linley give it up, he had to do the same. Hear that? Rice Gem delightedly raised an eyebrow. Why don't you just toss the sovereign's might and go your own way, while the three of us go ours? Or, just keep it? Linley wasn't the overly polite sort to begin with, only, this canteen of sovereign's might was simply too valuable, and so he wasn't able to accept it right away, which is why he had acted in such a manner. But now that Rice Gem had responded in such a way, what else could Linley do? All he could do was, with a flip of his hand, store the canteen of sovereign's might into his interspatial ring. That's more like it. Rice Gem chortled merrily. To be honest, earlier on, when I just reached the high god level and hadn't fused that many of the profound mysteries, I probably wouldn't have been willing to be generous, even if you asked me to. Eh? What's that about? BB said. Linley just laughed while listening. With BB and Rice Gem standing together, it was like a pair of youths. Their eyes were both so lively and agile, they looked like two siblings. The four of them chatted while walking forward. What my mother said is that I needed to be tempered. Rice Gem laughed. Without me having reached a certain level of power, if she were to give me a large amount of sovereign's might, I would never feel as though I were in any danger, which would make it harder for me to make any breakthroughs. Thus, only after I fused 5 profound mysteries did my mother stop restricting me in terms of how much sovereign's might I could have. Linley nodded slightly. Without a sense of danger, it would be fairly hard to rise in power. Linley could completely understand the actions of the Redbud Sovereign. Oh, you have so much sovereign's might. Bosses for Divine Beasts clan rarely hands out even a single drop of sovereign's might. BB said with a sigh. Rice Gem laughed loudly. The 4 Divine Beasts clan? How can they compare to me? An enormous clan like that has millions of people, scattered throughout the 4 Great Plains. The 4 great sovereigns did indeed bestow a huge amount of sovereign's might to them. But did the people of the 4 Divine Beasts clan learn to treasure it? They did not. Those 4 clan leaders probably never imagined that their 4 sovereigns would perish. When the 4 sovereigns died, the time came that they no longer had access to unlimited amounts of sovereign's might. They were completely dumbfounded. Once the 4 sovereigns died, they no longer had a source for sovereign's might. It would be hard for them to acquire any more. Of course they would hand it out sparingly, 1 drop at a time. Linley, hearing this, nodded to himself. The deaths of the 4 ancestors did indeed strike a heavy blow against the clan. An enormous clan like that, whose fame shook the various plains, fell just like that. Linley let out a sigh. Originally, when Linley had entered the Azure Dragon clan, Linley had sighed at how much sovereign's might the clan had. But now, he understood that giving each elder a single drop was a way of being thrifty in using it. When the 4 sovereigns were still alive, most likely the manner in which the Azure Dragon clan divided up sovereign's might was completely different. The 4 Divine Beasts clan originally was very strong. However, in the countless planes of the universe, they still cannot be considered the number 1 clan. Rice Gem said. There was a clan even more powerful than the 4 Divine Beasts clan. Linley was rather surprised. The number 1 clan is the Augusta Aogus Ita clan of the Divine Light Plane. Rice Gem said with a calm laugh. Linley knew a few things about the Infernal Realm and the Netherworld, but very little about the other planes. The Augusta clan. 3 names drifted into Linley's mind. These 3 names came from Baruch's intelligence reports on commanders. All 3 were commanders, and the 3 of them, all shared the surname Augusta. Clearly, they were of the Augusta clan. Back then, Linley hadn't paid much attention. After all, there were quite a few siblings who were commanders. For three to share one surname wasn't too surprising. The first-generation member of the Augusta clan is the chief sovereign of light. Ricegem said, pursing his lips. Linley now understood. No wonder the clan is so powerful. They are the descendants of the chief sovereign of light. As a chief sovereign, one could imagine how exalted a status and how great the power the chief sovereign of light possessed. The chief sovereign of light has many descendants. The second generation of the clan has 182 members. Ricegem said with a sigh. Linley and Bibi were both stupefied. Ricegem, are the second generation members all the sons and daughters of the chief sovereign of light? Linley didn't dare believe it. In the Four Divine Beasts clan, the Azure Dragon only had a son and a daughter, while the Vermilion Bird had only a single child. The White Tiger had one child, while the Black Tortoise had two. But this Augusta clan's second generation had 182 members. Right. Ricegem nodded. The chief sovereign of light was originally a member of an ordinary race before he became a chief sovereign. Thus, unlike the divine beasts who have few children, he had 182. However, these 182 children are not all on the same level. Still, because the population of the Augusta clan expanded very rapidly, and because they had sufficient resources, they naturally produced quite a few experts. However, the Augusta clan has only expanded in the divine light plane. They aren't like your Four Divine Beasts clan, which scattered throughout the planes. The Augusta clansmen are very arrogant. The always taciturn Riyam suddenly spoke out. Linley looked towards Riyam. He could feel the anger within Riyam's words. Ricegem sighed and said, one of my mother's emissaries, Riyam's good friend Bosley Buletin S.I. was killed by the forces of the Augusta clan. Bosley now only has a weak clone remaining. I imagine this time, the Augusta clan's people came to the planar battlefield as well. If we encounter two of them, we have to kill some of them to vent our anger. Forget it. Enough about that clan of bastards. They ruin the mood. As Linley's group of four left the battlefield, they didn't run, just casually walked forward. In the planar battlefield, aside from paragons like Bayer, their hunting squad feared no one. But that battle had, indeed, attracted quite a few people. On the desolate earth, 5 figures emerged. The leader was a youth who was dressed in a beautiful silver robe, and who had long, dazzling hair. Oh, the amethyst rampart. Hey, that's Bayer. The golden-haired youth's eyes lit up. He saw, in the distance, Bayer standing in the sky like a celestial divinity. With Bayer present, the 5 hadn't dared to go near. But after watching from far away for a time, they saw that Bayer actually left. Young Master Montilo Mentiilo, this is a good opportunity. Next to him was a callous, short silver-haired man who was dressed in a golden robe. The golden-haired youth's eyes lit up. Right at this moment, the golden-haired youth suddenly turned his head to look nearby. There were actually 2 people, a man and a woman, walking over. Montilo, long time no see. The leader, a black-haired, silver-robed woman said with a light smile. Rainasala na shat. Montilo laughed as well. You saw that battle just now, right? Bayer went to act against Ricegem's group. I wonder what the results of that battle were. The silver-robed woman, Rainasa, said with a laugh. But I'm certain that Ricegem remains alive. I'm certain about this as well. Montilo said with a calm laugh, and then his eyes lit up. Rainasa, how about we join forces and go teach that Ricegem a lesson? Teach him a lesson. Rainasa frowned slightly. I know that a grudge exists between your clan and Ricegem, but, Rainasa also knew Montilo's status. Montilo was a third-generation member of the Augusta clan. The second generation had 182 members, and the third generation had more than 1,000. Montillo relied on his innate talent and his ability to have a fairly high status within his clan. But compared to Rice Gem, his status was far inferior. After all, the chief sovereign of light had too many children. Montillo was just a grandchild, while the Redbud sovereign only had a single son. There weren't many who would dare to kill Rice Gem. "Don't worry, we won't kill Rice Gem," Montillo said with a light laugh. "I'll be responsible for entangling Rice Gem, while the other 3 of you, along with my other 4, 7 in total, will act against Rice Gem's comrades. If you can kill one, do so. It's best if you kill them all. If we can't kill Rice Gem, we can still kill his comrades." Montillo's eyes flashed with cold light. Reynesa turned to discuss this with the 2 youths by her side, then laughed. The sovereigns were lofty individuals. As long as one didn't commit any forbidden acts, there wouldn't be any problems. Even if they badly injured Rice Gem, there wouldn't be a problem. The sovereigns actually hoped that their children would suffer setbacks while growing up. As long as they didn't kill Rice Gem, it was fine. As for Rice Gem's comrades and their lives, the sovereign didn't have the time to bother with them. Nor would the sovereign lower her status to bother with them. The world of deities had its own rules. Sovereigns generally wouldn't casually interfere. Fine. However, the badges we get from killing them are mine, Reynesa said. Fine. Montillo immediately agreed. Let's go, then. Rice Gem and the others have most likely gone far away by now, Reynesa said. Immediately, the 2 forces merged and the 8 of them stealthily slipped forward at high speed. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 32, What's This? The planar battlefield was as quiet and icy as ever. The wind blew and sand flew everywhere. Linley, Bibi, Rice Gem, and Raisham walked forward casually, preparing to find a good place to rest. Rice Gem suddenly turned his head to look behind. What is it? Bibi said, puzzled. Linley, seeing the situation, turned his head to look behind them as well, but behind them, the scene was still one of desolate, wild grass. There wasn't a single person present. But Rice Gem furrowed his brows. It seems someone is present. As soon as Rice Gem spoke, Linley sensed how from behind, the aura of 2 badges from their alliance could be sensed. Those 2 auras were flying forward towards them at high speed. Linley gave a suspicious look, and amidst the wild grassy growth, 8 figures suddenly appeared, flying straight for Linley's group. 2 belonged to the Divine Darkness Plane's side, while 6 belonged to the Divine Light Plane's side. However, for the purposes of this battle, they were on the same side. Montillo. Rayam's voice boomed out. Montillo. Rice Gem's face changed. Bang. A wild surge of black energy emerged from his body. He had immediately used his sovereign's might, while at the same time, that long spear appeared in his hands. Not hesitating in the slightest, Rice Gem bent back, like a powerful longbow that was being pulled, and then threw out the sovereign long spear in his hands forward. Crackle! Filled with sovereign power, the weapon blasted forth explosively. That amethyst long spear flowed with black light. Moving at high speed, it transformed into a black blur, creating cracks in space as it flew forward. The sovereign long spear was aimed at a solitary, arrogant-looking middle-aged man by Montillo's side. Humph! By the arrogant fellow's side, a petite little green-haired lady suddenly exploded with white light. She moved like a gust of wind to receive the blow in front of the arrogant fellow. Her right fist, covered by a black glove, actually came smashing against the sovereign spear's tip. Bang! The fist and the spear tip collided. Rumble! That petite green-haired lady was knocked back explosively by the collision, and several cracks in space appeared as well. As for the amethyst sovereign long spear, it flew back towards Rice Gem at high speed. Rice Gem, you killed the members of my Augusta clan. Today, we'll punish you a bit for it. Montillo laughed loudly, while at the same time, his body began to blaze with white light as he flew towards Rice Gem like a giant bird. While flying through the air, his entire body actually began to shoot out with strands of white silk, which wound their way towards Rice Gem. Rice Gem was furious as well, and he called out through divine sense, "Go all out and kill them. Use your sovereign's might, kill." Bang! Rayam suddenly stomped on the ground viciously. Rumble, the earth beneath the feet of the enemies suddenly rose upwards as the land instantly rose up. Then pressed down towards the seven, blocking their line of vision as well. Kill! Rayam's eyes were filled with a murderous intent as well, and he too charged forward. Right at this moment, 7 enemy figures were shooting towards them as well. What terrible luck! One is the Augusta clan, while the other is Rice Gem. They immediately used Sovereign's might as soon as the battle started. They have no idea of what the concept of being thrifty is. The silver-robed woman, Rainasa, muttered in her heart. Still, her body glowed with a blue light as well. The battle had instantly exploded. Linley instantly dragon-formed as well, and Mirage appeared in his hands. He immediately activated a drop of destruction-type Sovereign's might. Linley sighed mentally with praise. Having an entire canteen of Sovereign's might really does change things. If he only had 2 or 3 drops, how could he use it so wantonly as he just did, at the very start of battle? Linley now understood why the 4 Divine Beasts clan could be spread throughout so many planes but still be so powerful. Most likely, the 4 Divine Beasts clan of then was much like he was now. They had no reservations about using Sovereign's might. Oman Wu man, you go deal with that Azure Dragon clan fellow. You just so happen to counter the Azure Dragon clan. Montillo gave the order while shooting forward towards Rice Gem. Actually, there was no need to give the order. Because Rice Gem's side only had 4 people in total, and because Montillo was dealing with Rice Gem, the other 7 were more than enough to deal with Linley and the other 2. Don't worry. That arrogant-looking silver-haired, gold-robed man launched himself off from the ground, instantly arriving by Linley's side. Actually, it wasn't just Oman who attacked Linley. As the saying goes, there were many monks, but only so many alms to go around. Before Oman arrived, a whip-wielding youth who belonged to Rainasa's side attacked Linley. When that long whip struck out, it actually transformed and elongated, coiling towards Linley like a giant serpent slashing out with its tail. Linley's form retreated at high speed. Bang! Mirage blocked the whip. Linley's body instantly radiated a black aura, forming an enormous blackstone space. Although the power of this technique when fueled by destruction-type Sovereign's power wasn't as great as when it was fueled by Earth-type Sovereign's power, the strength of the gravitational power still vastly exceeded that of High God power. Right after Linley blocked the whip, the golden-robed man descended from the heavens. Linley saw, to his astonishment, that a 3-meter-long mace suddenly appeared within the golden-robed man's hands. The golden-robed man smashed directly towards Linley with the mace. Crackle! As the spikes of the mace tore through the air, it actually caused spatial fractures to appear. Not good. Linley hurriedly controlled the direction of his gravity. Previously, it was downwards, which made this golden-robed man move even faster. Repulsive force. However, although he was slowed by the gravity, it was too late, because the golden-robed man had already arrived. That spiked mace was already in front of him. Linley could even sense a powerful gravitational field. This golden-robed man trains in the laws of the earth. Linley felt a powerful threat from him, and Mirage flipped outwards, filled with destruction-type sovereign power. Exploding forth. The tip of Mirage was smashed head-on by the spiked mace. Clang! Linley only felt a terrifying force surge from Mirage to the center of his palm. Rumble! That terrifying force caused the draconic scales in the center of Linley's palm to shatter, and blood oozed out. Mirage was smashed towards Linley's shoulders, while the spiked mace continued to descend. Pressing down with Mirage, it smashed heavily against Linley's shoulder. And this was after Linley had frantically used Mirage to block, otherwise, the mace would have smashed into his head. A sovereign weapon. Linley was completely certain that the spiked mace was a sovereign weapon. Bang! Draconic scales shattered, bones splintered, and blood flew in the air. Linley's left arm was broken off, while Linley himself smashed towards the ground like a meteor at high speed. With a swoosh sound, he entered the ground, leaving behind just a large tunnel. As for the golden-robed man with the spiked mace, he didn't hesitate at all, immediately following into the tunnel. Boss. BB, seeing this, stared with a changed look on his face. Linley's power had reached the commander level, but he was considered one of the weakest commanders. Against a powerful commander who had a sovereign weapon and who was extremely strong in the laws of the earth, Linley was going to be trampled to death. Bang! BB was knocked flying as well. But BB was completely uninjured, and he couldn't be bothered to use his innate divine ability to take revenge on his attacker. BB's first reaction was to dive into the tunnel which Linley was smashed through. Boss, no matter what, you can't die. BB hurriedly flew underground. Actually, from the start of the battle till now, Montilo's side had no idea that BB was the God-Eater rat. After all, during that moment of crisis when BB used his innate divine ability earlier, he had been within the mountain. No one outside could see it. In addition, BB's signature, his straw hat, had been destroyed during the battle with Bear. Although BB could use divine energy to form another one, BB had just finished a life and death battle and wasn't in the mood to make another one yet. Without having a straw hat, Montilo and the others weren't able to recognize him. If they knew that BB was a God-Eater rat, perhaps Montilo would have changed the plan. After all, they had people with soul-protecting sovereign artifacts. But unfortunately, they didn't know who BB was. Boom! That enormous spiked mace came smashing down once more. Linley's Mirage sword once more blocked. Bang! Linley was once more smashed downwards, but fortunately, during the past 5 centuries of training, Linley had made some improvements with regards to the laws of the earth. He had reached a bottleneck in fusing the 4 profound mysteries, and although he had yet to make a breakthrough, his power had already increased significantly. Thus, faced with the attack of such a powerful expert, he didn't immediately die. Instead, he was able to just barely rely on Mirage to preserve his own life. Unfortunately, in terms of weapons, his was slightly inferior. Both he and the enemy used Sovereign's might. As for the laws, clearly the enemy surpassed him. Although within the Blackstone space, the enemy was simply too close. Linley was continuously descending, while the enemy continuously smashed downwards with his spiked mace from above. Bang! Yet another smash. Linley just barely blocked, but he was once more smashed downwards, his body blasting through the earth and the rocks, continuing to go deeper. I can't go any deeper. If I go any deeper, I'll encounter spatial tears. Linley knew very well that the underground of the planar battlefield was very dangerous. Once one reached a certain depth, one would encounter spatial tears. The deeper one went, the more spatial tears there would be, until one finally fell into chaotic space. Haha, your ability to resist isn't bad. If I can't kill you, then I'll send you into chaotic space. A savage voice rang out in Linley's mind. Bang! Yet another mace blow smashed downwards. Linley was barely able to block, but his palm was already covered with blood, and his body was covered by it as well. Although this was slow to describe, in truth, from the moment Linley's began fell into the ground until now, only a moment had passed. After all, the golden-haired man was constantly smashing down with his mace, giving Linley no chance to rest at all. At this dangerous moment, around Linley's body suddenly appeared an enormous azure dragon phantom. The golden eyes of the azure dragon stared towards this golden-robed man, Oman. Innate divine ability, Dragon Roar. But just as he used his innate divine ability, that Oman launched yet another vicious mace blow downwards. Bang! Linley's body once more sank downwards. Given Linley's current level of power, all he could do was ensure that he wouldn't be smashed to death. There was no way he could prevent himself from being knocked downwards. Crackle! A long spatial tear that was tens of meters long and half a meter wide slashed past Linley's body. Quite a bit of earth disappeared before the tear vanished. Linley couldn't help but feel cold. Not good. I'm almost at the limit. Linley instantly understood that if he went down any further, the spatial tears would become even more common. In addition, with each vicious downwards blow of the spiked mace, Linley would be smashed at least a few dozen meters or even 100 meters. He was already at the limits. If he sank another few dozen meters or 100 meters, he probably would have truly been pushed into chaotic space. You really are able to resist. But, down you go. The golden-robed man, who had already escaped the temporal impact, once more sank downwards, the spiked mace in his hand once more mercilessly smashing down towards Linley. Rumble, a strange energy instantly surrounded the golden-robed man. Innate divine ability, God-Ader. Mother ***, die. An enraged bellow rang out. Bibi, at this critical moment, had finally arrived. At the same time, he gave a vicious kick towards the golden-robed man, who launched a backhand blow. With a bang sound, Bibi was smashed through the nearby earth. Bibi. Linley hurriedly flew towards Bibi. What sort of attack was that? The golden-robed man was disdainful. How come I didn't feel a thing? The golden-robed man had been staring at the below Linley when Bibi had used his innate divine ability. He didn't see the illusion of a God-Ader rat, so he naturally didn't know how powerful this attack was. As for the God-Ader, in the face of the soul-protecting sovereign artifact of the golden-robed man, it was like an egg smashing into a rock. It was useless. The golden-robed man didn't understand how powerful that attack had been. He thought it was an ordinary strike. Swoosh! Linley already arrived by Bibi's side. Boss, this person isn't affected by my innate divine ability. Bibi sent mentally. Haha, the two of you, die together. That sound rang out in Linley and Bibi's mind, while his figure arrived in front of them. Suddenly. Rumble. Out of nowhere, a 10-meter long, 1 meter wide, terrifying spatial fracture appeared between Linley, Bibi, and the golden-robed man. Terrified, the golden-robed man didn't dare to draw any closer. If he were to charge into the spatial fracture, then he really would enter chaotic space. But the strange thing was, a tiny black shadow actually flew out from the spatial fracture, moving as fast as lightning. This black shadow flew out of the spatial fracture towards the direction of Linley and Bibi. Linley's first reaction was to stretch his hand out and grab it. After grasping this black blur, Linley felt a surge of unusual energy enter his body. As for the nearby Bibi, he clearly saw what this black blur was. This was a seemingly ordinary, but very beautiful crown. Only, the crown had lost its luster long ago, and the sunken cavities for the jewel settings of the crown were all empty. Clearly, the jewels were long gone, and the crown had lost its beauty. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 33, A Battle. If this tattered crown had been lying on the ground, Linley wouldn't even have given it a glance. It was incredibly tattered, and the gemstone settings of the crown were all empty. It had no particular aura either. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than an ordinary crown made in a material plane. Deity artifacts or sovereign artifacts, all artifacts that had been nurtured by power would generally have some unique auras. Even cheap items such as inkstones and netherstones had unique auras. But this crown was as ordinary as a material item. But when Linley took the crown into his hands, a unique energy was transmitted into Linley's body. This energy was very unusual, it was like spring rain falling over Linley's wounds. Instantly, Linley's shattered arm as well as many of his upper body wounds began to heal and close at an astonishing rate. In an instant. Aside from a small wound which remained on his chest, the other parts of Linley's body, including his shattered arm, were all completely healed. How can that be? BB was shocked as well. He too felt that this was inconceivable. The stronger a body was, the harder it was to repair it. Linley's dragon-formed body, although inferior to BB's, far surpassed the power of most high god artifacts. How could it be so easily healed? Boss, what's going on? How did your wounds suddenly heal so quickly? Also, that small wound on your chest, why didn't it heal? BB hurriedly sent through divine sense. Is it connected to that weird, tattered crown? Linley was feeling stunned as well. BB, I'm not sure either. Within this tattered crown, there was a strange energy which entered my body. Indeed, in an instant, it healed my wounds. But it seemed as though there was only a little bit of energy, it was all used up before fully repairing the damage done to my chest. Linley sent back through divine sense. After having finished transmitting energy, the tattered crown no longer had any more energy remaining. Resting in Linley's hand, this tattered crown once more appeared completely unremarkable. But Linley still clearly remembered that feeling when the tattered crown had transferred energy to him. This tattered crown flew out from that spatial tier. Clearly, it flew out from chaotic space. For something to be able to remain within chaotic space without shattering, this tattered crown should be made from a material that is stronger than high god artifacts. Linley knew how dangerous chaotic space was. Spatial tiers abounded, and that sort of tearing power would destroy high god artifacts, transforming them into dust. But the tattered crown hadn't been destroyed. This alone was proof that it was unusual. What's that? The golden-robed Oman stared at the crown in Linley's hand, then let out a loud, cold laugh. Ha ha, your luck isn't bad. This crown actually passed through a spatial tier and arrived here. It should be a sovereign artifact. I imagine that in the past, when commanders battled here, a commander died in a spatial rift and the sovereign artifact was lost within. But from the looks of it, this sovereign artifact is damaged. With a flip of his hand, Linley stored the tattered crown into his interspatial ring. This wasn't the time to analyze the tattered crown. BB, seize the opportunity. Let's hurry up and flee. Don't waste time with this fellow. Linley once more controlled his Blackstone space, filling it with destruction-type sovereign power and generating a powerful repulsive force that was applied to the body of that golden-robed Oman. This big, golden-robed fellow isn't even fazed by my innate divine ability. He really is hard to deal with. BB didn't want to tussle with this big fellow either. Linley and BB hurriedly flew into the air, while at the same time changing the direction towards which they were flying. The repulsive force changed to be an upwards force. Oman couldn't help but move, although he quickly became accustomed to this gravity. You want to escape? Oman stared at the enormous spatial rift in front of him. He first flew upwards, wanting to fly up and over the spatial rift. In the planar battlefield, especially at such a depth, even an expert such as Oman had to be careful. Otherwise, if he slipped and fell into a spatial rift, that would be terrifying. But just as he flew up towards the space above the spatial rift, the upwards gravitational force suddenly transformed into a downwards force. Die! Linley, who had been preparing for this the entire time, howled furiously in his mind. One can imagine how powerful the gravity of this Blackstone space that was formed from sovereign power was. Although Oman was one of the powerful emissaries of the chief sovereign of light, he had originally been resisting the upwards gravitational pull. Naturally, the energy in his body was pointed downwards, so as to cancel out that force. But the gravity suddenly changed from upwards to downwards. Instantly, his own internal downwards energy joined forces with the downwards gravity. Oman had held the upper hand this entire time. Although he was careful, this sort of sudden, contrasting change caused Oman's body to suddenly sink as well. What was below him? An enormous spatial rift. The golden-robed Oman was caught off guard. His face couldn't help but change. He, too, could sense the astonishing attractive power of that spatial rift. Instantly, a white light exploded forth from his body. Bang! The spiked mace trembled violently, causing the nearby space to distort. By relying on the counterforce, Oman was able to escape the spatial rift. Those two bastards. Although Oman had escaped in a short period of time, Linley and BB had already fled more than 200 or 300 meters away. I swear I'll kill you too. Oman bellowed furiously, then chased in pursuit. Linley and BB had, for now, escaped one tribulation, but on the earth above them, Ricegem and Riyam were in absolutely dire straits. Ha ha! Montilo's loud laughter echoed in the air, while at the same time, thousands of tough strands of silk snaked outwards from him, entangling Ricegem. The greatest problem wasn't just that these strands were tough, they were fast. Every single strand was as fast as a ray of light when it shot out. They constantly entangled towards Ricegem. Montilo, if you have any ability, fight me head on. All you can do is rely on this sort of detestable technique. How can that be considered proof of ability? Ricegem's long spear also danced about in a blur, constantly shattered and breaking many of the strands. Unfortunately, although he might destroy 1,000 strands, 10,000 more would emerge from Montilo's body. As long as Montilo's sovereign power wasn't used up, he was in no danger of running out of strands. Although Montilo didn't have as much sovereign's might as Ricegem did, an inexhaustible supply, he was still a member of the Augusta clan, and as a talented expert of the clan, he naturally was treated very well and had quite a bit of sovereign's might. I don't have the ability to kill you. Montilo hovered there in midair, smirking as he sent mentally. On my side, in one-on-one combat, only Oman poses a major threat to you. But we aren't prepared to kill you. Our mission is to kill your 3 comrades. Haha, I imagine that those 2 comrades of yours who went underground are already dead. Ricegem's face turned rather white. He understood how powerful these experts of the Augusta clan were. The Augusta clan's experts were divided into the actual members of the Augusta clan, as well as the emissaries of the chief sovereign of light. These emissaries would assist the Augusta clan as well. As for Oman, he was himself an emissary of the chief sovereign of light, and an exceedingly strong one at that. Gray-a-a-a-or. A furious bellow rang out. Boom. Suddenly, the entire earth trembled and rose upwards, as large amounts of boulders emerged from the ground, shooting everywhere. Riyam. Ricegem's face changed. Oman went to pursue Linley and BB, while Montilo was tying up Ricegem. Then, there were 6 people against Riyam. Although the 6 were not commanders, they clearly had the power of commanders. Even Ricegem would find it hard to endure the combined assault of those 6. Hey, that fellow of yours is quite powerful. Montilo smirked. It won't be so easy for you to kill Riyam. Although Ricegem was worried, he still held hope in his heart, because Riyam was the most powerful emissary in service to his mother. Although Riyam was always quite taciturn, his strength was extraordinarily frightening. And right now, Riyam had entered a berserk state. Gray-a-or. Yet another growl, and Riyam's body suddenly expanded dramatically. Standing on the ground, Riyam had actually transformed into a tower-like brute that was 10 meters tall. His fists were like 2 meteors, wildly smashing in every direction. Every single fist carried exceedingly terrifying power. And even the 6 attacking him didn't dare to casually block those fists. Space twisted as every single punch caused explosive tears in space to appear. The power was so great as to make one's face change. Riyam's entire body was glowing with a bizarre, Golden yellow tattooed glow. Someone close to Ryam would realize that these golden tattoos actually formed into a strange shape that looked like a fist. Upon seeing this, the 6 attackers couldn't help but frown, and their hearts sank as well. The countless planes had given birth to some truly strange life forms. For example, metallic life forms or plant life forms. In turn, volcano titans and world titans were exceedingly rare. They were all extremely strong races. As for Ryam, he was one of the extremely rare kings of the world titan race. Generally speaking, the creatures known as world tyrants were born with the ability to control the earth and to control stones, and were able to absorb all sorts of mineral essences to strengthen their body. So there was an expert like him present. The 6 only now grew cautious. Ryam was a person who never revealed himself. Ever since his friend, Bosley, had been killed, he had begun to accompany Ricegem in the planar battlefield. Neither Linley nor anyone else knew much about this Ryam. All of you, die. Ryam's eyes glowed with yellow light, and his enormous fist smashed heavily towards his foes, each fist containing the power to tear space apart and cause it to shatter. He had been born with limitless brute strength, and he had fused 5 of the profound mysteries of the laws of the earth. He also had a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. He truly was very powerful. Haha, everyone, let's see who is the first to kill him. That silver-robed woman, Rainasa, laughed loudly. Although Ryam was mighty, the 6 enemies weren't weak either. And, there were 6 of them. All supreme experts. Humph. A green-haired maiden suddenly moved at exceedingly fast speed, dodging the heavy blows of the titanic Ryam, but just after she dodged Ryam's fist, Ryam's right arm suddenly twisted, and his elbow smashed heavily towards the green-haired woman. This attack was so fast that the green-haired maiden only had enough time to use her own fist to block. Her dainty little fist, covered with a black glove, collided with the hammer-like elbow. Bang! The green-haired maiden's body was smashed underground, creating a deep hole. As for Ryam, a large tear suddenly appeared in his elbow as well. It looked terrifying, but it didn't shed a drop of blood, and in the blink of an eye, it was repaired. Swoosh! The green-haired woman flew out from underground. This fellow's body is too tough. My sovereign weapon is only able to wound him. Everyone, be careful. The green-haired maiden sent mentally. Instantly, the other 5 began to launch attacks wildly. Although multiple wounds and holes began to appear on Ryam's body, Ryam instantly healed them all. It wasn't just material attacks, the 6 launched soul attacks as well. It's useless. This big fellow probably has a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. A white-robed man sent mentally. For the moment, no one knew what to do. Everyone, I'll tie up this big fellow momentarily. I'll leave the part of killing him up to you 5. Rainasa sent mentally, a hint of a cold smile on her face. Rainasa's formerly beautiful maiden's figure suddenly became surrounded by the blurry illusion of an enormous octopus. Suddenly, her innate divine ability descended. Ah! Ryam felt as though his entire body was suddenly constricted by an incomparably sturdy rope. Space twisted and distorted, pressing down upon him. Ryam howled angrily, and his steel-like muscles bulged violently, seeking to break free from his restraints. Swish! Swish! 2 figures struck virtually simultaneously towards Ryam's head. These 2 were the green-haired maiden and a cyan-robed youth. The green-haired maiden used her fists, while the cyan-robed youth used a broad warblade. The green-haired maiden's fist struck out with full power. Crackle! The broad warblade glowed with water-type sovereign power, easily tearing through space and chopping towards Ryam's head. Gray-a-a-or! Ryam roared furiously. Boom! The fist and the warblade landed on Ryam's head. With a boom sound, Ryam's head was struck head-on by 2 mighty sovereign artifacts, and it finally blew apart, sending shattered fragments everywhere. But strangely enough, no divine spark fell out. careful. A panicked cry rang out in the minds of the two. Riyam's two terrifying fists were already swinging at them. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 34, A Battle of Attrition? The green-haired maiden and the cyan-robed youth weren't able to dodge in time. Their first reaction was to use their sovereign artifacts to block. The two massive fists slammed over, pressing down like two small mountains. Boom! Boom! Two weighty smacking sounds. The green-haired maiden and the cyan-robed youth were both smashed underground, but immediately afterwards, the two flew out from underground, hovering in midair close to their four companions. We were wrong. Rainasa somberly sent mentally to the other five. This big fellow is a world tyrant, not a human. If he was in human form, then his head would indeed be his weak point, where his soul would be. But he is currently in world tyrant form, and his weak point is his core. The soul is within his core, and his divine spark is within it as well. It was just like the flame tyrant which Linley had originally encountered in the necropolis of the gods in the past. Even though the flame tyrant's entire body had been shattered, he still didn't die. The flame tyrant's weak spot was that translucent stone, that was the core. This sort of metal or rock-based life form all had an important core component. The soul was contained within it, and after becoming a deity, their divine spark would be added to it as well. As long as the core was destroyed, they could be killed. Haha, so that's the case. The cyan-robed youth began to laugh loudly. Since we know where his weakness is, killing him will be easy now. I'll use my innate divine ability one more time. The rest will be up to you. Rainasa sent mentally to the other five. Actually, even if Rainasa didn't use her innate divine ability, the six would still be able to kill Riyam. After all, Riyam only had two fists, and wouldn't be able to block six people at once. Those six were entirely capable of smashing a giant hole into his chest, then charging in and destroying the core. However, using the innate divine ability to bind Riyam, then kill him would be much easier. That comrade of yours is quite powerful. A world tyrant. For this sort of monstrous life form to reach such a level in profound mysteries is quite rare. Montillo clearly was quite amused. He was completely confident that his side would be able to easily kill Riyam, they just miscalculated earlier, that was all. Not good. Ricegem felt that the situation was bad as well. Last time, they had smashed apart Riyam's head, the next time, the six would definitely attack Riyam's core. Gray-a-a-a-or. Ricegem couldn't help but release an enraged roar, and behind him, the illusion of an enormous amethyst beast suddenly appeared behind him. Innate divine ability, Amethyst Rampart. Rays of amethyst light filed with black sovereign power spread out, forming a black cocoon. However, this giant black cocoon wrapped itself around Montillo. Actually, the shape of the amethyst rampart, as well as the target it wrapped around, was completely up to Ricegem. Just like that, for a moment, Montillo became trapped within the amethyst rampart and unable to break out. Ricegem regained his freedom. Riyam, quick, flee. Ricegem sent through divine sense. At the same time, Ricegem shot out like an arrow, and as he did so, that amethyst long spear once again appeared in his hands. His right arm swung out in an arc, throwing the long spear forward. The amethyst light flashed forward at an astonishing, terrifying speed, striking towards that silver-robed woman, Rainasa. Rainasa had no choice but to swing back with her two arms. Clang! The violet light smashed against Rainasa's arms, and Rainasa was knocked flying into the air. Rainasa dared to block like this, because she had something to rely on. She had a single sovereign artifact, a defensive sovereign artifact. Although Rainasa wasn't killed, since she was knocked aside, her innate divine ability was disrupted midway through. Riyam, quick, let's go. Ricegem said frantically. Out of the way. A keening howl. The green-robed maiden's body flashed forward, and she appeared before Rice Gem. She seized the opportunity to attack Rice Gem, while Rice Gem's sovereign weapon was still flying back towards him. He could only let out a low growl as he stretched his hand out, viciously smashing forward. Rice Gem's crystalline palm was covered with black light. It looked like a casual blow, but it swept forward towards that tender little fist like a tornado. Bang! A low, echoing sound. Rice Gem was knocked backwards, while at the same time, with a crunch sound, bone snapping could be heard. Crackle! Riyam's body quickly shrank. A blurry black light shot out from Rice Gem's body, forming an amethyst space that was 1,000 meters across, and a powerful gravitational force was generated, causing the 7 enemies to unconsciously tremble. "Don't let him escape. Kill him," Rainasa shouted mentally. "Let's hurry and leave." Rice Gem couldn't be bothered with anything else, immediately fleeing with Riyam frantically. Whap! A long whip snaked out, striking onto Riyam's body. The others were already in pursuit. "Don't even think of escaping." By now, Montillo had broken out of the amethyst rampart, and countless white strands of light once more shot towards Rice Gem. Grr! Rice Gem turned his head and let out a furious roar. Instantly, a large amount of destruction-type sovereign power spread out, forming an enormous web. This was, once again, his innate divine ability, Amethyst Rampart. This enormous amethyst rampart spread out towards the 7 pursuers, but unfortunately, the 7 maintained some distance from each other, and so it couldn't completely envelop them. It only surrounded 4 of them, while 3 fled, one of whom was Montillo. Swoosh! Swoosh! Rice Gem and Riyam fled at high speed. "Chase!" Montillo shouted. Rice Gem knew that the situation was bad, but he knew, Linley and Bibi are underground and are being attacked by Oman. Although Oman is very powerful, Bibi's defense is strong as well. He definitely won't die. As Rice Gem fled, he also raised his head and howled loudly, "Linley! The 2 of you, hurry and flee for your lives. If we have the chance, we'll meet again." That furious roar shook the heavens. Underground, Linley and Bibi were fleeing in sorry shape as well. Oman clearly was an expert who trained in the laws of the earth, and his underground senses were quite accurate. Although by relying on the Blackstone space, Linley and Bibi were able to maintain a distance of a few hundred meters, Oman was still able to easily locate where the 2 of them were. Oman was fixed on Linley and Bibi, unwilling to let them go. "Linley! The 2 of you, hurry and flee for your lives. If we have the chance, we'll meet again." This thunderous roar echoed even underground, and both Linley and Bibi heard it. "Boss, it seems like Rice Gem isn't doing that well either," Bibi sent mentally. "There's only a single person chasing after us. There are 7 others after them. Perhaps the 7 don't dare kill Rice Gem, but they'll dare to kill Riyam. Let's go. Let's not just stay in this region." Although Linley was currently fleeing, he was consistently running around in circles. He had been hoping to be able to escape alongside Rice Gem and Riyam. But now, it seemed, the situation was already terrible and that there was no choice but to have everyone split up. Whoosh! Linley and Bibi didn't care which direction they had to flee towards, they selected one and accelerated, flying outwards in a straight line. Swoosh! Swoosh! The 2 suddenly emerged from the ground. "The 2 of you, don't even think of escaping." Oman surged out from underground at almost the same instance. Linley and Bibi turned to look. Oman was actually following from just a few hundred meters behind. That distance could be traversed by commanders, given their speed, in just the blink of an eye. Linley and Bibi were unable to escape Oman's field of vision. Now that they were above ground, Oman could track them with his eyes. Underground, Oman was able to rely on his senses and attunement to the earth to locate where Linley and Bibi were. Bibi bellowed, "Hey, Oman, aren't you tired, chasing us like this? I'm bored to death here in the planar battlefield anyhow. I'm in no rush. Even if I have to chase for 2 more days, I'll catch up to you too. Oman seemed to be quite relaxed, and snickered, in terms of speed, you two are much slower than me. If it weren't for the fact that you are able to rely on something similar to Rice Gem's amethyst space, how would you be able to shake me off? As he spoke, Oman drew parallel to Linley and Bibi, only, the two maintained a distance of a few hundred meters. Oman's natural speed was indeed faster than Linley and Bibi's. But in the Blackstone space, there was no way Oman was able to draw close to Linley. If you just chase like this, you'll never be able to catch us, Bibi said loudly. Once you run out of sovereign power, even if you have this gravitational space, it won't be able to stop me. Oman snickered. Indeed. Without sovereign power behind it, the power of the Blackstone space would drop dramatically. Oman, by relying on his own sovereign power, was completely capable of resisting the Blackstone space to draw closer to Linley and Bibi. Haha, you want to use up our sovereign power. Linley couldn't help but laugh loudly. Mr. Oman, just keep chasing. Linley was in no rush either. He continued to flee in a straight line, moving farther and farther away from the original site. Moments later, Linley's sovereign power finally was used up, and the black aura emanating from Linley's body vanished. Haha. Oman laughed loudly, moving lightning fast into the Blackstone space's zone. Indeed, the power of the gravity of the Blackstone space was now much weaker, and although Oman was slowed down, he was still a good deal faster than Linley and Bibi. Prepare to die. Oman was currently in an excellent mood. He was finally going to kill these two hard-to-deal-with punks. But right then. Bang. Linley's body once more radiated a black glow, and instantly, the power of the Blackstone space increased yet again. Linley and Bibi both increased in speed as well. More sovereign's might. Oman was stunned, and his speed lessened. Oman, you want to compete with us in sovereign power attrition? Bibi snickered. Go for it. We're happy to oblige. At the same time, the scope of the Blackstone space shrank, down from 500 meters to 100 meters. This scope was enough to guarantee their safety, although the size was less, the rate at which it used up sovereign power was slower as well. It seems you have quite a bit of sovereign's might. Oman was rather hesitant now. Of course. My bro Rice Gem is the son of the Redbud Sovereign. Bibi snickered. Come, I want to see how much sovereign's might the chief sovereign of light gave you. Oman was stunned. He knew how much sovereign's might Rice Gem possessed. As sovereigns saw it, if an emissary died, they could find another one, they didn't care at all, unless it was someone who was a paragon or at Baruch's level. Thus, they couldn't possibly give their emissaries that much sovereign's might. To give a few dozen drops at once was a sign of great favor already. But for the sovereign's children? Oman knew that the second and third generation members of the Augusta clan each had large amounts of sovereign's might, and that was despite the fact that there were more than 1,000 members in the second and third generation. As for Rice Gem, there was just him. How much sovereign's might did he have, then? As many commanders saw it, Rice Gem was an absolute tycoon. They envied him. But Rice Gem was no fool. Aside from his friends and brothers, he would never hand out sovereign's might to others. Can it be that Rice Gem gave a large amount of his sovereign's might to these two? Oman wondered. Prior to this, he hadn't considered this possibility, because in his heart, he always viewed sovereign's might as being precious. He had considered things from his own viewpoint, he wouldn't be willing to give it to his friends. He had forgotten, however, that from Rice Gem's viewpoint, the situation was different. Continuing after these two is nothing more than a waste of sovereign's might. Oman frowned. I'm not going to compete with them. Oman didn't say a single word, he very straightforwardly turned and left. In virtually the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizons of the battlefield. Only now did Linley and BB come to a halt. He left. BB began to laugh. He wasn't willing to use up his sovereign's might. Linley sighed. It really was different, having so much sovereign's might. In the past, he was extremely careful in how he used it, unless it was a life or death situation, he wouldn't use it. We've used 2 or 3 drops, but the canteen is virtually unchanged. Linley sighed to himself. 2 or 3 drops, to a canteen, was like a single hair on the skin of an ox. Boss, we've split up with Rice Gem and Rayam. BB said with a frown. Linley stared at his surroundings. It was silent and desolate. It's up to luck. We'll see if we encounter them again. Linley said with a frown. Right now, we need to find a place to rest. I haven't had a chance to carefully inspect that crown yet. Let's go. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 35, A Rock. 2 black blurs were moving forward at high speed, while right behind them were 7 other blurs, chasing and attacking. Only, the 7 behind the 2 were some distance apart from each other. This Rice Gem's speed is too fast. Only you, young master, are just barely able to keep up. The others aren't able to keep up. What should we do? A silver-haired elder followed Montillo while sending frantically. The 2 of them both trained in the laws of light, and were specialized in speed. As for the others, they trained in water and fate, and they weren't skilled in speed. Chase. Montillo stared fixedly at the 2 forms up ahead. Rumble, suddenly, the earth rose up, and a large number of boulders shot up out of the ground. Every single boulder flowed with black light. Clearly, every single boulder contained destruction-type sovereign power. Montillo and his people didn't care about the boulders, but they didn't dare to underestimate the power of destruction-type sovereign power. Bang! Bang! Montillo and the rest of the 7 either dodged aside or smashed the boulders apart. These weren't too much of a threat to them, but it did slow them down. They pulled away yet again. Montillo narrowed his eyes, anger roiling within his chest. This Rice Gem actually has a helper like him, and is willing to use up a large amount of sovereign power to use these techniques. Suddenly, Montillo noticed that the sovereign power in his body had already slowly dried up. He couldn't help but sigh to himself. Forget it. It is enough that we were able to put Rice Gem in such a bad situation, this time. Halt! Montillo barked. After he halted, the other 6 halted as well. Although Montillo had used up a drop of Sovereign's might, the other 6 hadn't used it all up yet. After all, Montillo had immediately used those countless white strands to entangle Rice Gem from the very beginning, and had been constantly using up his sovereign power. Previously, he had used up too much, and so it was only natural that he was the first to exhaust it. Stop chasing. This is just a waste of Sovereign's might. I don't have enough Sovereign's might to just throw it away on Rice Gem. Montillo snickered. Rice Gem, that punk. He's always so arrogant, but this time, we made him flee in such a sorry shape. That's enough. The silver-robed Renaissance snorted. It's enough for you. But we 3 don't even have a single badge to show for it. Montillo glanced at Renaissance, then chortled, Renaissance, there will be more chances in the future. Right, in a bit, Oman will return. He definitely must have killed those 2 people. If he acquired any badges, we'll give them to you. What say you? I'll take you at your word. Renaissance finally revealed a hint of a smile. Right at this moment. Montillo, Rice Gem, will remember this. Rice Gem's bellowing voice could be heard from far away. Hearing the resentment and anger in that bellow, Montillo wasn't frightened at all. Instead, he began to laugh loudly. He said to the other 6, "Ha ha, everyone, hear that? Rice Gem is utterly furious. Last time, we killed that Bosley, but he wasn't able to do anything to us either. This time, we gave him yet another lesson. Even if I stood right in front of him, he wouldn't be able to do anything to me. Young master, you have a defensive sovereign artifact. At most, Rice Gem will be able to just rant. What can he actually do? Can it be that the sovereign will interfere for a minor matter like this? The green-haired maiden laughed. Montillo and Rice Gem weren't able to do anything to each other. However, Montillo clearly had more assistance than Rice Gem did. Thus, it was normal for Rice Gem to suffer more losses. Oman's returning. Montillo suddenly turned to look. Montillo's side currently had 6 people emanating the aura of Sovereign's Might. 6 auras of Sovereign's Might was as brilliant a beacon as the sun, here in the planar battlefield. Who wouldn't be able to sense it? Oman was easily able to follow the aura to arrive at high speed to this place. Montillo, remember your promise. Reynesa laughed lightly. Of course. Montillo nodded very confidently. Oman. Montillo smiled as he welcomed him. Although Oman followed him, he was the sovereign's emissary, a wielder of 2 sovereign artifacts. He was exceedingly powerful. Oman landed. Young master. Right. Earlier, Ms. Reynesa and I agreed that after killing Rice Gem's people, the badges we acquired would go to Ms. Reynesa. Hand over those 2 badges to me. Montillo said with a laugh. Oman shook his head. I didn't acquire the badges. Hearing these words, Montillo's face went blank, while the face of the nearby Reynesa turned cold. With a snicker, she said, Oh. We all know very well how powerful Mr. Oman is. Can it be that you weren't able to kill those 2 kids? I imagine you killed them and took their badges, but aren't willing to hand them over. 2 commander badges were indeed items of great preciousness. Oman let out a cold snort, turning his head to stare hard at Reynesa. What did you say? Did you call me, Oman, a liar? Reynesa raised an eyebrow, then chuckled. What, Mr. Oman, are you trying to use your power to suppress us? If I say I didn't acquire them, then I didn't acquire them. Don't go too far. Oman snorted coldly. There was no way he could prove something like this. But clearly, as far as Reynesa was concerned, Oman was an extremely formidable commander. While Linley and Bibi were people who Reynesa had never seen before, they shouldn't be too powerful. Thus, she was certain that Oman must have killed them. Haha, Reynesa let out a calm laugh. Since that's what you say, Mr. Oman, then of course I will believe your words. Let's leave. Reynesa clearly knew that there was nothing here for her. How could she be willing to stay? The other 2 youths immediately flew away with Reynesa as well. They left. Montillo turned to look at Oman, then laughed. Oman, now you can tell me, did you kill those 2 or not? Montillo believed that Oman had lied earlier as well. I really did not. Oman shook his head. Those 2 weren't weak either. That Azure Dragon clan youth was able to take several of my blows head-on without dying. As for that other youngster, his body took a blow head-on with my sovereign weapon, but he didn't die either. Afterwards, I chased them, but the youth of the Azure Dragon clan had a gravitational space ability that was similar to Rice Gem's. I wasn't able to catch them, so I had to give up. Montillo frowned. That youngster took a blow head-on with his body? It seems he must have a defensive sovereign artifact. That youth of the Azure Dragon clan is also capable of the amethyst space technique. His relationship with Rice Gem must be quite deep. Forget it. Let's find a place to rest, first. Montillo immediately led his group of 5 in departing from this place. In the desolate wilderness, Linley and Bibi were stealthily advancing. Currently, their sovereign power was already depleted. Earlier, when Linley was radiating sovereign power, others would easily find them, and so Linley naturally had flown forward quickly. Now that the sovereign power was exhausted, Linley chose to carefully advance. "Boss, what should we do in the future?" BB sent. "There are 2 or 3 more centuries before the final battle of this planar war. I hope that before that, I'll make a breakthrough and fuse a 4th profound mystery." Linley knew that every single person who dared to roam across the planar battlefield was a top-tier commander. "After I fuse my 4th profound mystery, I'll go out roaming again. By then, I'll be strong enough to do so." A person's power was dependent on their base strength, their profound mysteries, and their weapons. For example, hammers, whose original form was that of a golden mountain which had been nurtured for countless years by the divine earth plane itself, then birthed. His body's strength was enormously great, and even without fusing any profound mysteries, he surpassed most 7-star fiends and was close to the power of an Azura. This was a reason why he was made a sovereign's emissary immediately upon being born. After having fused 4 mysteries, Linley didn't dare to block his fists at all. Even an empty air punch was capable of penetrating Linley's chest. The terrifying power of his strikes were already comparable to high god paragons. His base level of strength was simply too great. Linley's own base power naturally couldn't compare to Hammer's. Still, he was still vastly superior to ordinary high gods. "Once I increase in strength tenfold, I won't fear those people any longer." Linley and BB were looking for a place to rest. They didn't pay attention to or notice that a piece of rubble that was less than 100 meters away in the desolate wilderness. The ground had too many of these pieces of stone, who would pay attention to one in particular. "Someone is finally coming this way. From the looks of it, the youth is the leader. I'll first ambush and kill him, the strong one, then dispose of the weak one." Very suddenly. Swoosh. The rock shot towards Linley at high speed. Linley, while walking forward, found to his amazement that a rock had suddenly shot towards him. "Someone's here." Linley immediately grew cautious. He instantly dragon-formed, while at the same time spread out his blackstone space, spreading it to a distance of 500 meters. Instantly, the rock that had entered the blackstone space sank down, but it was already very close to Linley. Bang! The rock suddenly disappeared, transforming into a person. Another expert of the laws of the earth. Linley was startled as well. Originally, Linley had thought that someone had shot the rock out towards him, but the rock was actually a transformed expert of the laws of the earth. Linley had to sigh in praise at the ability of his ambusher in concealing his aura. It was already on nearly the same level as Rice Gem. A ray of blinding saber light slashed out, traversing the distance of less than 10 meters. In an instant, Linley's field of vision became filled with nothing but that dazzling saber light. When that saber chopped out, space itself twisted. Clang! This dominating, unstoppable blade suddenly emitted a bizarre clanging sound, and its strength weakened as well. The assassin was stunned. An invisible sword. Prior to this, he hadn't noticed it, but now, with his divine sense spread out, he realized that Linley was holding a sword in his hand, a sword that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Swoosh! That assassin, having failed with his first saber chop, immediately turned to flee. "Lupe Loopu, you are going to flee after failing on the first attack." Linley's loud, clear laughter rang out. "Better for you to stay here." After having seen that saber attack, Linley, who had gone through Baruch's documents, already knew who it was. This was an expert of the laws of the earth, Lupe. At the same time, Linley felt a surge of fear. If it hadn't been for the fact that his blackstone space had caused Lupe to reveal his true form a bit earlier and slowed him down, that earlier attack most likely would have put Linley in grave danger. As soon as Linley's words came out, the blackstone space changed the direction of gravity. The downwards gravity transformed to pull towards Linley. The figure's speed immediately lessened greatly. Linley knew what this Lupe's abilities were. Lupe specialized in subterfuge and stealth. He was also extremely fast. However, now that he was trapped within Linley's Blackstone space, Lupe had met his perfect counter. His speed and his stealth abilities could no longer save him. Feeling the changing direction of the gravitational pull, Lupe was instantly shocked. Not good. Lupe had already begun to feel regret after seeing Linley's transformation. He was certain that as a member of the Azure Dragon clan, Linley was definitely capable of the clan's innate divine ability. I wouldn't necessarily be able to defeat this expert of the Azure Dragon clan, and he has a subordinate with him. If we really start to fight, not good. He didn't hesitate any further at all. Bang! Gritting his teeth, Lupe used up his precious, soul drop of Sovereign's Might. Instantly, a strong earthen yellow glow emerged from his body. Seeing the situation, Linley didn't hesitate at all. His body, as well, exploded forth with a black aura. Lupe, amongst commanders, was considered below average in strength, only, he was fairly famous for his stealth abilities, and also extremely fast. What? He is using up Sovereign's Might as well? This Azure Dragon clan punk is really willing. Lupe, seeing the situation, felt his heart shake. This sort of opponent is perfect for practicing against. Linley sent to BB. BB, don't interfere. This Lupe's attack power is comparable to mine, but he's fused more profound mysteries of the laws of the earth than I have. He's perfect for training against. I might even gain an insight. BB snickered back. Fine, boss. I'll just watch. BB intentionally retreated to a distance of 100 meters, giving Linley and Lupe more than enough space to fight. Knowing that it was Lupe, BB was no longer worried. Lupe, seeing the situation, felt rage in his heart. He could tell that the opponents didn't feel him as being worthy of concern. If it wasn't for this gravitational space, you wouldn't even be able to touch me. Lupe felt the power of the gravitational space increase greatly as well. He wouldn't be able to escape. Since he wouldn't be able to escape, his only option was to fight. Book 19, Metamorphosis, Chapter 36, Bloodbinding, Crown. Lupe trained in the laws of the earth, and had fused 5 of them. Of the 6 profound mysteries of the laws of the earth, the only one he had not been able to fuse with the others was gravitational space. He had completely fused the other 5. After having fused vitality, world walking, throbbing pulse of the world, strength, and essence of the earth, he created an extremely powerful world walking technique, while devising a way so that his spiritual energy would form a continuous loop within his mind, not letting a single hint of his aura leak out. He had reached an exceedingly high level in stealth and fleeing. However, whenever there is a gain, there is a loss. His saber attacks contained only 4 fused profound mysteries. As for world walking, there was no way for him to fuse that into his saber. Whoosh! Lupe moved through the Blackstone space like a slippery fish, constantly moving about at high speed. But Linley easily moved to follow him, always blocking in front of him. It's uncertain who will be the one to die. Lupe growled mentally, and the warblade in his hand silently sliced through the air, chopping towards Linley's skull. In the instant that Linley's Mirage Godspark sword collided with the warblade, with a bang, the saber's energy exploded outwards. Bang! One saber, one sword. Linley's body trembled slightly as he retreated. Ha, excellent. Linley laughed loudly, then charged forward again, but unfortunately for Lupe, his weapon was slightly inferior to Linley's Godspark sword. He's relying on his weapon. Lupe also realized that Linley's weapon was extraordinary. Feeling resentment, Lupe's eyes turned cold, and suddenly, his index finger and middle finger of his left hand suddenly struck out, and a translucent sword finger ray shot towards Linley, at a speed so fast that it directly entered Linley's mind. This was a soul attack. Ha, Lupe, it's best if you don't show off that bit of soul attack prowess you have. Linley didn't even care about it. Experts of the laws of the earth were never skilled in soul attacks to begin with, and Lupe himself didn't specialize in soul attacks either. How powerful could his attacks be? Linley, just by relying on his spiritual energy alone, was able to defeat the attack. Lupe had only attacked in such a way due to having no other options. Is that so? Lupe laughed coldly, his attacks becoming all the wilder. Linley was more than happy to accompany him in the fight. Clang. Linley and Lupe's forms constantly exchanged blows, but clearly, the two were on par. As Linley saw it, Lupe's power amongst commanders really was towards the lower end as well. He doesn't even have a single sovereign artifact, indeed, his only option is to rely on ambushes. However, it is worth my time to learn his sort of stealth techniques. Linley could guess that Lupe had definitely fused world walking amongst his profound mysteries. In addition, that saber blow which held the power in abeyance, then made it all explode forth at once. This saber blow can be said to have mastered and executed the profound mysteries of strength to a perfect level. Linley continued to exchange blows with Lupe, with the intentions of training his swordplay. As for Lupe, his goal was to seize any opportunity to kill Linley and thus get a chance of escaping this battle. Slash. Linley's sword shot out. Lupe actually delivered a backhanded blow with his saber, sliding his saber against the flat of Linley's sword and pressing down with a blow towards Linley's body. Oh! He's really going all out. At this critical moment, only a swish was heard and an azure golden blur seen as Linley's draconic tail, carrying a terrifying surge of force, smashed viciously against the warblade. In terms of toughness, Linley's draconic tail wasn't weaker than high god artifacts at all. The warblade was knocked off balance. Slash. It originally would have struck Linley on his head, but now, it slashed Linley on the chest. After having been struck by the draconic tail, the blow of the saber was now weaker, it just barely broke through the scales, drawing forth a hint of blood. Slash. Linley's mirage sliced through Lupe's head, severing it from his body. Once one's head was separated from one's body, that was virtually a guarantee of death. After all, even though the spirit might be present, the body could no longer be controlled to fight back, it was as good as defeat. You were pretty vicious, but the end result was your death. Linley looked at the flying head. If I had a sovereign artifact, the result would definitely be different. Lupe's head bellowed. He knew that he had to die. Swish. Linley's mirage flashed with light, and Lupe's voice came to a halt, and a thin red line appeared through his head. At this moment, Lupe's high god artifacts, interspatial ring, and a gold badge all fell out. If you had a sovereign artifact, the results would be different. BB flew over, chuckling. Everyone can say that. If my boss had a sovereign-level soul-protecting artifact, defensive artifact, and weapon, aside from paragons, who would he fear? Linley shook his head and sighed to himself. This world was a world where the strong devoured the weak. Strength was exalted. People had to rely on their own abilities to acquire sovereign weapons as well. Only the strong would be valued and be made emissaries, and be bestowed a sovereign artifact. Only the strong would acquire sufficient military merits and be able to trade for a sovereign artifact. Everything depended on individual effort. As for the children of sovereigns, they did indeed have a great advantage, but sometimes luck, too, was part of one's power. This Lupe's ambushing abilities weren't bad. Unfortunately, once the battle really begins, he's definitely one of the weakest commanders. It makes sense that a sovereign wouldn't select him as an emissary. Linley shook his head and sighed. Thus, as far as the profound mysteries go, even amongst those who have fused 5 profound mysteries, there are still differences in power. There were 6 profound mysteries of the laws of the earth. Upon fusing 5 of them, there were 6 possible fusion results, with the different fusions resulting in different specialty areas. This commander badge was fairly easy to acquire. Linley collected the gold badge, feeling joy in his heart. I now have 3 badges. I'm only lacking for one more. BB, let's go. Linley and BB moved at high speed, leaving the scene of the battle. A place like the planar battlefield was a place where the experts who entered had to be mentally prepared for death. Some experts had to die in order for others to live. Deep within the heart of an ordinary, large mountain in the planar battlefield, Linley and BB had carved out a cave for them to temporarily live in. This cave was separated from the outside world by hundreds of meters of mountain rocks. Generally speaking, commanders wouldn't be able to use their divine sense to scan inside here. But of course, there were 3 exceptions. One was if they used sovereign power to do the scanning. The second was a high god paragon. They had very large scanning ranges as well. As for the third, that was high god soul mutates. Soul mutates had very special souls, and their souls were generally far stronger than the souls of ordinary high gods. But of course, there were differences amongst soul mutates as well. The chances of a successful soul mutation with 2 different types of divine power was decent. The vast majority of soul mutates were in possession of 2 types of divine power, with Olivier being on this level as well. But virtually all individuals who had 3 types of divine power and yet underwent a soul mutation would die. In the entire infernal realm, there was only a single person who successfully underwent and survived a soul mutation with 3 types of divine power. And as for the soul power of 3 power soul mutates, it was extraordinarily great. As for those who underwent a soul mutation while having access to 4 types of divine power, in the countless planes of the universe, over the countless years, there had never been a single successful case. No one had any idea what the result would be, if a person with 4 types of divine power underwent a soul mutation. Within the cave, Linley was hefting that tattered crown, staring carefully at it and inspecting it. The crown didn't have a hint of luster to it. If he tossed it into a rubbish pile, even if a deity noticed it, they wouldn't pay it any attention. The nearby BB stared at it as well. After a long time, he mumbled, "Boss, is there something special about this tattered crown? Why can't I see anything special about it? It makes me feel as though it is just an ordinary item." "It isn't." Linley shook his head. "Still, I can't see anything special about it either." When Linley had received that surge of unusual energy from the crown, it had healed his wounds. In addition, this thing had flown out from chaotic space. Linley naturally was certain that it was extraordinary. "I know it's not ordinary. Anything that can survive in and fly out of chaotic space is either a Godspark weapon or a sovereign artifact." BB stared carefully at the crown. "But for it to be in the shape of a crown, as I see it, it should be a soul-protecting sovereign artifact." This was BB's judgment. If it really is a soul-protecting sovereign artifact, given how tattered it is, it should be a damaged sovereign artifact. Linley laughed. If the master of a soul-protecting sovereign artifact was still alive, there was no way that the sovereign artifact could be damaged. A damaged soul-protecting sovereign artifact meant that the defenses of the artifact had been breached, and the master had died. There's only one option right now. Linley nodded slightly as he spoke. "Boss, quick, give it a try," BEB urged. The only option was, to bind it with blood. Linley stretched out his index finger. With but a thought, a drop of fresh blood oozed out of his skin, then dripped down onto the crown. BB stared. Linley frowned. The drop of blood hit the crown, and it splattered and rolled down onto the ground. It wasn't absorbed. Linley was puzzled. "What's going on? This thing has an owner." BB frowned. Linley pondered for a moment, then nodded. "There's one possibility. The owner of the crown might have been fighting in the planar battlefield, and then died, with the sovereign artifact falling into chaotic space. However, the owner of the crown still has a divine clone outside, and so there is no way to bind it with blood." "Makes sense. Ah, wait. Boss. BB suddenly said. This crown is damaged, but there is no way for chaotic space to damage a sovereign artifact, right? There is no way for high gods to damage sovereign artifacts either. Linley was stunned. He couldn't help but nod slightly. When high gods did battle, generally speaking, after one died, the sovereign artifact would be completely undamaged. There was no way for the power of a high god to damage a sovereign artifact. Can it be that the owner of this crown was a sovereign? This was Linley's guess. This crown was then damaged in a battle between sovereigns, just like my coiling dragon ring. If it was a sovereign, then, the sovereign definitely must have fallen. BB said. If the sovereign fell, the other sovereign who killed him definitely wouldn't have spared his clones, he definitely would have pulled up the grass by the roots. This crown should then be an ownerless item. It should be bindable by blood. Linley didn't understand either. He was able to bind the coiling dragon ring with blood, but not this crown. Still, for now, this was all speculation. Forget it. Linley shook his head. BB, if we can't figure it out, let's not worry about it. Long story short, there's no way to bind it with blood. Perhaps, this crown isn't a sovereign artifact at all. What else, besides a sovereign artifact, can survive in chaotic space? BB mumbled. Linley and BB couldn't understand it. Based on the knowledge available to them, the only thing that could survive in chaotic space, aside from sovereign artifacts and Godspark weapons, was perhaps divine sparks. As for ordinary materials made of ores or metals, there was no way they would be able to survive in chaotic space. Unable to get a clear understanding of the crown, Linley had to give up for now. He stored it back into his interspatial ring, and then, based on his earlier line of thoughts, began to train. Only 300 years remained from now until the final battle of the planar war. Linley wanted to make a breakthrough in advance. That blade blow of Lupe's. Completely storing up all the power, and then letting it all explode forth with amazing force. The fists of hammers. That utterly unblockable punch, it continued to swirl about Linley's consciousness. That spiked mace of the golden-robed man. Linley carefully pondered the attacks of that spiked mace as well. Over the past few years, he had encountered many experts of the laws of the earth, such as the Red Cliff Lord or Bailey. Every single one of those experts of the laws of the earth had analyzed and developed a supreme technique that belonged to them. But those were their techniques, not his. Still, Linley wanted to discover some of the secrets behind those supreme techniques, hoping to find something which would help him suddenly break through the bottleneck he was facing. And just like that, Linley began to tirelessly analyze them. BB, utterly bored, just rested there within the cave, his eyes half-lidded as he occasionally munched on fruit. He was currently controlling a death god golem outside. It has been 3 years, but we only encountered a single person. And that person wasn't someone that was easy to deal with. The weaker people have all hidden away, as cowardly as rats. Wait. I'm a rat as well. BB suddenly turned to look at Linley. Huh. BB's eyebrows rose slightly. A large amount of earth elemental essence suddenly appeared around Linley's body. Slowly, with Linley at the center, it formed into an earthen yellow sphere. What's going on with the boss? BB didn't understand. Whoosh. Very strangely, the earthen yellow aura suddenly contracted, from a size of 3 meters to just a tiny dot. This sort of high-speed contraction actually caused a spatial tremor, and the ripples from this tremor caused the stones nearby which were within the cave to instantly transform into dust. The entire cave had just transformed into a giant sphere. At this moment, Linley opened his eyes, a hint of a smile on his face. Boss. You broke through. BB guessed. Linley looked at BB. He nodded slightly.